Chapter 496. Greystone Town. Z's eyes widened as she looked at Wang Ting, who had completely changed his appearance. With eyes filled with curiosity, she circled Wang Ting several times. All right. You're making me dizzy. Wang Ting grunted. Oh. Zi stopped in front of him. Address me as Viscount Snow from now on, all right? Wang Ting nagged again. Yes. Zi nodded. Wang Ting patted her head with satisfaction. He turned over the 4 vampire corpses and removed a scarlet ring from Viscount Snow's hand. By using the bewitch skill, he discovered that these vampires were not just here to simply hunt. Instead, they were here for the secrets left by a certain vampire ancestor. It was important to note that most vampires had a habit to hide all kinds of treasures in dark corners. They were passionate about hunting for the ones that were left behind by their predecessors. Of course, almost all biological creatures loved the excitement and thrills of treasure hunting. Wang Ting's eyes flashed, and he focused on the scarlet ring that no longer had an owner. He then swept his spiritual power and took out an aged scroll made of animal skin. He flipped it open and saw complex ancient words, which looked elegant yet complicated. The problem was that Wang Ting didn't know a word. This was not the common dark language. He shook his head and kept it away, planning to have it translated when the opportunity came. As for the vampire secrets, Wang Ting wasn't very interested in that. Well, he was not a vampire after all. Finding the path back home was the most urgent thing right now. He started searching the vampire corpses again. Besides a few black gems, there was nothing valuable. The other 3 vampires didn't even have a space ring. Poor souls. This should be the Dark Force Stone. Wang Ting muttered as he fiddled around with the few pieces of black gems, feeling the dark force in them. He lost interest after a few glances. After he was sure that he didn't leave anything, he snapped his fingers, and a cyan flame engulfed the corpses. Not even ashes were left behind after a while. Divine fire is so awesome. Let's go. Wang Ting held Z's collar and rushed into the sky, flying in the direction the vampire, Snow, gave them. In less than half an hour, a town appeared in their vision. This must be the Greystone Town that Snow had mentioned. The walls and buildings in the town were all clad in a unique style of grey stones, which was probably how it got its name. The houses in the town were basically stone forts. Wang Ting glanced over and didn't see anyone. It felt desolate. He landed outside the town and wandered towards Greystone Town. Although the town was sparsely populated, there were still dark apparitions guarding the gates. A few dark apparitions saw Wang Ting, who had transformed into Viscount Snow, and were surprised. However, they still stroked their chest and bowed respectfully. Viscount. Wang Ting already understood Snow's personality. He nodded coldly, showing the majesty of a viscount, and passed the vampires confidently. Zi was like a slave, following closely behind with her head down. When she first left the forest, she didn't have any fear. However, after being in such a foreign environment and having encountered dark apparitions, she was feeling uneasy. As a result, her current appearance was not a pretense. Seeing that the 2 had walked far away, the vampires started talking softly. The Viscount just left not too long ago. Why is he back so soon? I remember that the Viscount brought along 3 guards. Where are they? All right. The Viscount's matters are beyond us. By the way, the Viscount brought a young mixed blood back. I don't know what he's planning, unless... Here. Wang Ting picked up their conversation. The corner of his mouth twitched as he glanced at Ziyi from the corner of his eye. Phut. After passing through a long corridor, they reached a bedroom where Annie opened the doors respectfully for Wang Ting. Go down. Don't disturb me if I don't call you, Wang Ting said coldly. Yes. Annie glanced at Ziyi ambiguously with a pair of fox-like eyes before turning to leave. The corner of Wang Ting's eyes twitched. Damn it. What was that look? He couldn't be bothered to pick a bone with a vampire. Wang Ting brought Ziyi into the bedroom. He realized that the bedroom was extremely huge. Dark black wooden desks, undistinguished leather sofas, goose-down beds, the room had it all. Wang Ting let out a deep breath and said to Ziyi, just play alone there for a while. Don't run around. Ziyi nodded and looked around curiously. Wang Teng didn't care about her and turned around in the room. He activated spiritual sight and scanned in all directions before sitting down by the desk after no problems were found. Wang Teng looked through the books on the desk and on the bookshelf behind him. Some were written in dark language, while some were in another language that he couldn't recognize. He took one in a dark language. It was a common book, but the contents were about the history of the abyss world that he needed so urgently. If he wanted to leave this world, he had to first understand it. That way, he could find a way to do so. For the rest of the time, Wang Teng buried himself in the books until Ziyi came over and tugged at his shirt. He raised his head in uncertainty. "I'm hungry." Wang Teng was stunned. It was already dark when he looked out at the sky, making the dark world feel even more gloomy. A huge red moon hung high in the night sky. The faint red moonlight was scattered on the ground like gauze. The full moon felt like it was hanging overhead. Wang Ting could even see the craters and the rugged mountains on its surface. "It's already so late." Wang Ting smiled bitterly and stretched his back. Taking out the star beast meat, he started grilling it on the spot. He knew that vampires fed on blood, but Ziyi and he couldn't possibly drink blood like wild beasts. It was fortunate that he had star beast meat and other dry foods in his space ring. It was enough for him to eat for a long time. In the hands of a Force chef master, delicious grilled meat was quickly served. He even took out drinks as he sat around the table with Ziyi, enjoying themselves. Bang! Suddenly, a silhouette crashed in from outside the window. Chapter 497, Viscount, She's Still Young. The sudden arrival of an intruder caused the atmosphere in the room to turn awkward. Wang Teng and Ziyi were stunned. They stared at the person absent-mindedly with barbecued meat in their mouths. The person was wrapped in a slightly ragged black cape. The wide hood covered his face entirely. The light red moonlight shone behind the intruder, making him appear even more mysterious. Of course, if one ignored his rigid body after he saw the people in the room, everything would be perfect. He had sneaked in perfectly, landed on the floor perfectly, and got perfectly discovered. An interested look appeared on Wang Teng's face, and a glimpse of light flashed through the depth of his eyes. He activated his spiritual sight and immediately knew that this person was only at the 5-star soldier level. Also, his aura was similar to Ziyi's. "I'm sorry, I lost my way." As if he had felt Wang Ting's playful gaze, a hoarse voice came from underneath the cloak. He then slowly got up and retreated towards the window. One could feel that his eyes were fixated on the disguised Wang Ting as if he was afraid that he would make a sudden move. "You're already here. Why are you leaving in such a hurry?" Wang Ting smiled faintly. Upon hearing that, the pupils of the figure under the black cloak shrank. His speed increased drastically, and he just wanted to jump out of the window and escape. But at this moment, his body froze, and he couldn't move at all. He was bewildered. Looking at the smiling Wang Teng, he exclaimed, "What did you do?" He felt like his body was being bound by an invisible force. He wasn't even able to move an inch. This was Wang Teng's spiritual kinesis. "Spit it out. What are you doing here?" Wang Teng didn't bother to answer him and questioned him instead. "No, nothing. I just accidentally entered this place and disturbed your dinner. I'm really sorry about that, but that's just it," the black-cloaked man said stiffly despite feeling uneasy. "Haha." Wang Teng sneered. He decided to leave him on his own and turned to continue his dinner. Seeing that Ziyi was still looking at him, he turned her head back. "Leave him alone. Fill your stomach first." "Oh," Ziyi responded, having finally remembered the mouth-watering food. She shoved the barbecued meat into her mouth, eating away. After getting along for a few days, Wang Ting realized that this little creature was a glutton. Her belly might be small, but she could eat a lot. Both of them ate quickly as if they were afraid that someone would steal their food. The strong fragrance of the food spread across the room. "Coo, coo." Suddenly, a clear sound rang in the room. Wang Teng and Ziyi turned their heads simultaneously and looked at the figure in the black robe, who was standing upright in front of the window. "He seems hungry," Wang Teng commented. "Yes." Ziyi nodded solemnly. "Forget about it. Let's not care about him." We don't even have enough for ourselves, Wang Ting said. Okay. Ziyi nodded again. The two sped up. The meat and drinks on the table vanished quickly as if swept by a storm. Are both of them devils? The one in the black robe was going crazy. He seriously suspected if it was a wrong decision to come here tonight. Burp. Burp. At this time, his ears picked up at two sounds that sounded like burps. After eating their fill, Wang Teng and Ziyi came over to the black-robed man. He took off the hood, revealing a wrinkled and pale old man's face. When he saw his appearance, Wang Teng was slightly stunned. Mixed blood. Viscount, this is really unintentional. Please have mercy on me and let me go. I can become your servant as long as you don't mind my age. The mixed-blood elder showed a humble expression and laughed awkwardly. How can you be so shameless? Wang Teng glanced at him. Although it was a humble expression, there was a hint of slyness in his eyes, which couldn't escape Wang Teng's eyes. Looks like you don't plan to speak the truth. Wang Teng laughed coldly, and a red light flashed in his eyes. No. The elderly mixed blood immediately recognized the vampire's bewitch. Startled, he immediately closed his eyes, trying to avoid Wang Teng's gaze. However, he had underestimated Wang Teng. The real Viscount Snow wouldn't have been able to bewitch him, but Wang Teng's spiritual power was too great. It directly penetrated into his mind. The mixed-blood elder screamed. He was controlled by Wang Teng, and there was nothing he could do. He opened his eyes, his gaze lax and lost. What's your motive? Wang Teng interrogated. I just want to rescue the young mixed blood, he responded. Wang Teng went blank and glanced at Ziyi. This result was beyond his expectations. When Ziyi heard that, she didn't have any reaction. She just stared blankly at the mixed blood elder. What happens after the rescue? Wang Teng continued. Greystone Town is Viscount Snow's territory. After saving the young mixed blood, we will have to escape to other places for survival, the mixed blood elder replied. How many of you are there? Wang Teng had a sudden thought. There are hundreds of mixed bloods living in Greystone Town, but many of them have been enslaved. They are unwilling to leave. Wang Teng was solemn for a while. He asked a few more questions before dispelling the bewitch skill. The mixed blood elder woke up with a pale face and throbbing headache. He slowly understood what happened and looked desperately at Wang Teng. I have been hiding for so many years. Never did I expect to fall into the hands of vampires like you. The mixed blood elder sighed, and his facial expression turned calm. He's not a vampire. Ziyi suddenly opened her mouth. Stop joking. How is it possible that Viscount Snow is not a vampire? The mixed blood elder looked at Ziyi, thinking that her naivety was ridiculous. Chapter 498, Bluff. Wang Teng didn't want to explain anything, but something flashed across his mind, and he had a change of mind. His body underwent a transformation, and he was back to his human appearance. However, this was not his real face but another look. Furthermore, his ears were a bit pointed, having an appearance very similar to a mixed blood. Seeing his unfamiliar appearance, there was a hint of confusion in Ziyi's eyes. She didn't know what he was planning. Wang Teng winked at Ziyi and sent her a signal. He didn't care if she understood what he meant, but he turned to the mixed blood elder. How's this? You, the mixed blood elder was flabbergasted. He couldn't utter a single word. We have already eliminated Viscount Snow. I have disguised myself as him as I have a bold idea, Wang Teng said mysteriously. No, if you're not Viscount Snow, why do you know the bewitch skill? The elder couldn't believe it and sneered. Don't lie to me. No matter what you're plotting, I'll not fall for it. This is naturally because half of my blood is from vampires, Wang Teng calmly explained. A half vampire. The mixed blood elder was taken aback and frowned. Why should I believe you? You are in my hands. Your life and death depend on my words. Why should I make you believe me? Wang Teng said coldly. As he spoke, he transformed back into Viscount Snow and turned over to Ziyi. How about we just kill him? Has too much trouble. Ziyi froze for a moment. She looked at the elder, looked back at him, and nodded. Okay. How obedient. Wang Ting caressed her head, and his gaze suddenly turned hostile. "And I was here to save this young girl." The mixed-blood elder regretted once again. He shouldn't have come here. Wang Ting took out Mo Q and started measuring the elder's neck as if he was trying to find a suitable spot to start. Drops of cold sweat started flowing down the mixed-blood elder's forehead. He quickly shouted, "Wait, wait. Any last words?" Wang Ting asked, but he didn't put down Mo Q. The mixed-blood elder glanced at the huge weapon on his neck and swallowed a mouth of saliva unconsciously. "Well then, let's talk nicely. The truth is, I believe you." Wang Ting looked at him, dumbfounded. This old man was so quick to give in that he didn't even feel any sense of achievement at all. Ziyi tilted her head. She looked at the elder strangely, wondering why he had changed so quickly. The mixed-blood elder was embarrassed, and his face became hot. Fortunately, his complexion was so dark that no one could tell. "Don't tell me you're trying to pretend to believe me so that you can escape when I let you go," Wang Ting said in suspicion. "You can keep me by your side. I believe with your strength, I won't be able to escape," the mixed-blood elder said helplessly. "I'll believe you for the time being." Wang Ting withdrew his spiritual kinesis. The mixed-blood elder suddenly felt his body become loose. The invisible force had dissipated. He glanced at Wang Ting in surprise and lowered his head, revealing a faint smile. Wang Ting opened his hand, and a jade bottle appeared in it. Inside was a black spiritual dan sitting quietly. This was the poison dan that he had made when he was bored. It was initially just something he made for fun, but he didn't expect it to come in handy now. "Take this and eat it." Wang Ting smiled. Looking at the black dan on his palm, the mixed-blood elder's eyebrows twitched. This spiritual dan didn't look like any ordinary one, however, one had to bow to the circumstances. He felt an inexplicable chill when he faced Wang Ting's smile. He knew that if he didn't eat the spiritual dan, the Viscount Snow in front of him would not let him off easily. After the mixed-blood elder swallowed the black spiritual dan, Wang Ting nodded in satisfaction and patted his shoulder. He then said earnestly, "I made this dan from many toxic substances. Giving you such an item of great value shows how much I value you." The mixed-blood elder couldn't even curse. Even though he was frustrated, he could only show a flattering expression. "My lord, do you have any other orders?" Wang Ting sat back down on the sofa and beckoned to Ziyi for her to sit by his side. He asked lightly, "I want you to find out about the towns that exist in the dimensional rifts." Dimensional rift? The mixed-blood elder was stunned. He didn't know what Wang Ting was planning to do. He looked him carefully in the eye. "My lord, that is a very confidential matter. I'm afraid that it's hard to find out more." Wang Ting let out a cold snort. I'll go. I know all the mixed bloods in every town, I can definitely get some information." The mixed-blood elder's heart jumped. "That's good." Wang Ting smiled and waved. "Go. Ah yes, remember to come back here every 7 days, or else, you will die very miserably without the antidote." The elder's body shivered all over. Thinking about the consequences, he couldn't help but feel the numbness in his scalp. He bowed and saluted Wang Ting before turning around to leave. At the window, he turned back and carefully asked, "My lord, are you really a mixed blood?" "What do you think I am?" Wang Ting smiled meaningfully. "I understand." The mixed-blood elder nodded and jumped down the window, disappearing into the night. What did he understand? Wang Ting was a little confused. Ziyi curiously looked out of the window and into the direction that he disappeared, but she couldn't see anything. "Do you want to go with him?" Wang Ting walked over and stood by her side. Ziyi thought about it for a while and shook her head. "No." "Why?" Wang Ting probed. "He's too weak." Ziyi replied seriously. You sure are cheeky." Wang Ting knocked on her head and laughed. At this time, the mixed-blood elder was darting through the dark alleys as though he was an erratic shadow. He was concealed and extremely fast. It was obviously some kind of concealment technique. Soon, he was at a remote corner of Greystone Town. He looked around and made sure that he wasn't being followed before he felt relieved. He then walked towards a house and knocked on the door rhythmically. The door opened slightly, and a pair of eyes peeked through the gap. Seeing that it was the mixed-blood elder, the person let him in. "You're back, Rodney. You didn't get the girl out?" "Yes. I made a mistake." Rodney walked into the house and nodded with a solemn expression. There were a lot of figures in the house, and they were all mixed blood. The one who opened the door was a mixed blood that looked like a middle-aged woman. She asked anxiously, "What happened?" "That Viscount Snow is not simple," Rodney replied. "According to the news we heard, Viscount Snow is lustful. Although he's at the 7-star soldier level, he doesn't have any combat power." "Why wouldn't it be easy? Did you make a mistake?" the middle-aged mixed-blood woman asked curiously. "That Viscount Snow was changed to someone else." Rodney laughed bitterly. "Ah!" everyone in the room exclaimed. "How is that possible?" The female mixed-blood could not believe it. Rodney recounted what had happened without hiding anything before sitting down solemnly. After everyone heard it, they fell into silence. "You're saying a mixed-blood was disguising himself as Viscount Snow?" The female mixed-blood confirmed again. "You have already asked this several times. I saw it with my own eyes. How could I be wrong?" Rodney said impatiently. The female mixed-blood was a bit embarrassed, but she still frowned. "But it's really incredible that there's such a powerful and mysterious person amongst us mixed-bloods. If we can get him on our side, it would be great. Maybe we can go for it." Rodney had something on his mind. Considering his attitude towards that young girl, this person is somewhat trustworthy. He's looking for towns that exist in the dimensional rifts. We can find out more and see what he plans to do. The others hesitated for a bit before agreeing to his decision. Chapter 499, A History of Destroying Worlds. While the mixed-bloods were searching for news of the dimensional rifts on Wang Ting's order, he was enjoying the vampire viscount's lavish lifestyle. All the female servants in the castle had amazing figures. Besides the fact that they were dark apparitions, they were extremely pleasant to the eye. At this moment, Wang Ting was lying on the sofa. 2 servants were massaging his legs while another 2 were massaging his arms. Another one stood behind him and kneaded his back. Annie stood at the side, feeding blood-red little berries to Wang Ting. These red chestnut berries were a kind of spiritual fruit well liked by the vampires. After tasting them, Wang Ting felt that they were not bad. Ziyi was sitting beside him, happily taking the red chestnut berries and popping them into her mouth. She didn't care about Wang Ting's lavish lifestyle. She wasn't interested. Wang Ting flipped through a book and gradually understood the abyss world. He hadn't been doing anything recently. All he did was wait in the castle for the mixed bloods to bring him the news he wanted. "I didn't know that the dark apparitions world is so huge. There are many incredibly powerful families including the vampires, the 8-arms devil race, the lichens, and many others. These races are ancient, and they have frightening presences supporting them." Wang Ting put down the ancient leather scroll in his hand. His gaze flickered as he wondered to himself. Are they referring to the devil gods? He sighed silently. The waters in the dark apparitions world ran deeper than he thought. The human world couldn't be compared with them. If any of the frightening presence behind the ancient races landed in the human world could only be destroyed. This worry was reasonable. In an ancient book, there were recordings of the destruction of other worlds. It was written as if they were singing merits and praising the dark apparitions. This race destroyed a certain world, etc., etc. The dark apparitions thought of it as a merit. Mixed bloods referred to the descendants of the dark apparitions and the survivors of these destroyed worlds. No wonder they never received fair treatment in this darkland. To the dark apparitions, mixed bloods were only their slaves. Wang Ting took a deep breath when he saw this, his expression turning grim. Destruction of worlds. This was crazy, but the dark apparitions treated it as a way to expand their territory. Crazy. Wang Ting could only use this term to describe the dark apparitions' actions. After some time, he let out a sigh. These pieces of news were weighing down on his heart, but they weren't all bad news. The recordings in the ancient books made Wang Ting realize that the abyss world he knew was only a low-tier world of the Darkland. This wasn't the core of the Darkland. Wang Ting was surprised. At the same time, he heaved a sigh of relief. This meant that the powerful presences weren't in this abyss world. Even if there was one, it was rare. Hence, he was relatively safe. At this moment, a vampire servant walked over and said respectfully, "My lord, there's a mixed blood outside looking for you." "Oh." Wang Ting stopped pondering and raised his eyebrows. "Let him in." "Yes." The vampire servant went off. Soon, she brought the mixed blood elder over. "You can leave." Wang Ting waved his hand and ordered the servants and the housekeeper to leave. "My lord, do you need me to stay? That lowly mixed blood might harm you." Annie stared at the mixed blood in disdain. "With my ability, do I need you to protect me?" Wang Ting snorted. "Leave. Don't make me repeat myself." "Yes." Fear flashed past Annie's eyes. She left in a hurry. The elder started speaking only when everyone else had left. "Viscount, please accept Rodney's bow." He bowed at Wang Ting. "Your name is Rodney?" Wang Ting asked. "Yes." Rodney nodded. "My lord, I finally managed to find the news that you wanted." "Tell me about it." Wang Ting turned serious immediately. "The nearest dimensional rift is at Black Crow City." "I heard that the military is gathering there," Rodney replied. Wang Ting touched his chin and asked, "How confident are you?" "At least 50 to 60%, Rodney replied seriously. "It looks like I have to make a trip to Black Crow City," Wang Ting said thoughtfully. Whether this piece of news was real or fake, he needed to take a look. If not, he didn't know when the chance to return to the human world would come. Wang Ting was a decisive person. He made his choice instantly. "I'll leave for Black Crow City tomorrow. You will come with me?" "Yes, my lord." Rodney was surprised. He hurriedly bent down and bowed. Wang Ting took out a bottle of Dan and threw it to Rodney. "This is the antidote. It's enough for 1 month." "Thank you, my lord." Rodney was elated. He quickly caught the antidote. These few days, the poison Dan had been hanging over his head like a sharp sword. Now, he finally had the antidote. Although it was only for a month, it could alleviate his plight. "Do your things well. As a mixed blood, I won't let you die as long as you remain loyal to me." Wang Ting stood up and patted his shoulder while speaking in a meaningful tone. Rodney nodded in agreement. "If there's nothing else, you can leave first. Come again tomorrow, and we will head to Black Crow City together." Wang Ting waved his hand. Rodney started hesitating. "Is there something?" Wang Ting asked. "My lord, the mixed bloods have formed a mutual help association. They know about you and wish to meet you." Rodney hesitated before speaking. "Meet me?" Wang Ting was confused. "Aren't you afraid that I will use this against you to threaten you?" "My lord, you don't understand our situation. Our current circumstances are no better than this," Rodney replied with a bitter smile. Wang Ting smiled in interest. He thought for a moment and said, "All right, I'll go with you tonight." "Thank you, my lord," Rodney said happily. After Rodney left, Wang Ting went into deep thought. He said to Ziyi, "Let's visit your fellow companions tonight." Ziyi nodded in a daze. Night dawned. The blood moon hung high in the sky. Rodney came on time and stayed beside Wang Ting respectfully. Wang Ting changed into his mixed blood appearance and held Ziyi. He flew into the air and said, "Lead the way." A hint of astonishment flashed past Rodney's eyes when he saw Wang Ting stepping on air. He hurriedly went forward and sprinted to a certain spot in Greystone Town. Chapter 500. Chapter 500. After some time, the three of them arrived at the gathering spot of the Mutual Help Association. This location was different from the place Rodney met the mixed bloods the other time. As the saying went, the wily hare had 3 burrows. It looked like the mixed bloods honestly had a hard time in the Darkland. If not, they wouldn't have to be so vigilant. A sharp gaze flashed past Wang Ting's eyes. Then, he saw Rodney walking forward and knocking on the door. After some time, the door opened. Wang Ting followed Rodney inside. The mixed bloods in the room stood up. They seemed anxious but hopeful, sizing up Wang Ting and Ziyi silently. At the same time, Wang Ting was also observing the mixed bloods in front of him secretly. Although they tried their best to hide it, he could still see that their clothes were a little tattered and their appearances were time-beaten. They seemed to have experienced many hardships. Moreover, there was inferiority in their gazes. Wang Teng couldn't help but frown. Almost all the mixed bloods were the same. Their condition made him feel helpless. After staying in an environment for a long time, some things would seep into one's bones. Even if they wanted to resist, they didn't have the pride and the courage. That was probably why they placed their hopes on him, an unfamiliar mixed blood. Everyone, this is, Rodney wanted to introduce Wang Teng, but he suddenly realized that he only knew his fake name. He didn't know what Wang Teng's real name was. "Call me Zi Wang," Wang Teng replied. "Cough, this is Lord Zi Wang whom I've been talking about. He's very strong." Rodney coughed awkwardly before continuing. "Lord Zi Wang, Lord Zi Wang." All the mixed bloods greeted him. "Have a seat. I came to meet you at Rodney's invitation. I'm a mixed blood too, so we are one family from now on. Please come and look for me if you face any troubles." Wang Teng waved his hands and laughed. Rodney felt his lips twitching. If he hadn't seen Wang Teng's cold-blooded side, he would have believed him. The other mixed bloods exchanged glances with one another and felt that Rodney's evaluation of Lord Zi Wang was a little too low. He didn't look like a ruthless person. Instead, he seemed easygoing. Wang Teng intentionally acted friendlier to form a closer bond with the mixed bloods. Hence, they had a great time interacting with one another. Wang Teng even promised to use Viscount Snow's identity to provide them with resources and help. The mixed bloods had a rough life. Small favors were enough to make them feel grateful. When he left, he had already established a positive image in the hearts of these mixed bloods. Rodney sent Wang Teng off. After he came back, he saw everyone happily discussing how they should split the resources Lord Zi Wang was going to give them. He sighed silently. He wondered if the appearance of this lord was good or bad. He felt a little lost, but he didn't say anything. The next day, Wang Teng, Zi Yi, and Rodney left Greystone Town. There were many machines driven by force in the Darkland. The three of them rose on a force-floating airship transporting goods. Black Crow City was to the north of Greystone Town. It was a huge city situated in the wilderness. It was gloomy and grayscale in color. However, this place was more popular than Greystone Town. There were many races living here, and some commercial activities could be seen. It was quite similar to a human city. When the three of them arrived at Black Crow City, the sky had started turning dark. They alighted the force-floating airship and left the docking station. They prepared to find a place to stay. Rodney was a local and had been to many places, so he was familiar with Black Crow City. He brought Wang Teng and Ziyi to a hotel. The moment the door of the hotel opened, loud noises welcomed their ears. This hotel was a gathering spot for mixed bloods. Everyone inside was a mixed blood. In a big city like Black Crow City, there were many mixed bloods. Thus, there existed all sorts of gathering locations. The purebloods treated them as lowly citizens, so they wouldn't care about them. They wouldn't lower their status and visit these kinds of places either. Hence, these gathering spots were heaven for mixed bloods. In the hotel, the mixed bloods shouted loudly, drank low-grade black malt beer, and ate low-quality food. However, Wang Teng saw something different from them compared to the mixed bloods in Greystone Town. The arrival of the trio immediately attracted the attention of the people in the hotel. Rodney spoke to a red-nosed elder behind the counter. "Warren, I brought a lord over. Give us 2 rooms. Lord." A muscular mixed blood suddenly laughed in a mocking tone. "Hey," he said, "Lord. Do mixed bloods have a lord? Dale, shut your filthy mouth." Rodney's expression changed as he scolded the mixed blood hurriedly. "Why? Am I wrong?" Dale stood up abruptly. He was 2 meters tall and exceptionally muscular. He glared at Rodney and sneered, "Rodney, I think you're used to being a slave in Greystone Town. You call everyone lord now. Bastard, what are you saying?" Rodney's face turned black. He glared at the other party. "So what? Do you dare to fight with me?" Dale snorted. The mixed bloods around them started cheering them on, anticipating a good show. To these mixed bloods, the word lord was a lethal weapon that stabbed right into their hearts. They needed to endure during the day when they were facing the purebloods, but at night, in this hotel, no one wanted to bear with it anymore. They had to vent their frustrations. If not, they would go crazy. Wang Teng was wearing a black cloak. His gaze passed through the shadows of the cape as he sized up the mixed bloods with interest. This was the difference between the mixed bloods here and the ones in Greystone Town. They still had some pride. "Lord, let me teach him a lesson," Rodney lowered his head and said to Wang Teng. He was furious from embarrassment when he saw everyone cheering them on. "Go ahead." Wang Teng nodded. He didn't stop him. Rodney looked up and walked over. Everyone got up, emptying a spot in the middle. "Haha, at least you have some guts." Dale sniggered. He cracked his neck and released his fist. Rodney moved quickly. He dodged the fist and slid out a dagger from his sleeve. He stabbed it at Dale at the speed of lightning, aiming right at his abdomen, which was in plain sight. Dale snorted. He suddenly raised his arm in front of his abdomen. Clang! A metallic sound was heard. Dale wore braces on his arms. The dagger collided with the metallic braces and ignited sparks. Dale pulled back his hand instantly and threw another punch. Damn it! Rodney was shocked. He twisted his body and dodged the attack. However, he was too close. The moment Dale released his fist, he followed it with another. It slammed right into Rodney's abdomen. Bang! Rodney bent like a cooked prawn and flew backward uncontrollably. Everyone got out of the way. Just when Rodney was about to slam onto the ground, a slender hand caught his back. Cough. Rodney coughed a few times. Fresh blood dripped down the edge of his lips. "Thank you, my lord," he said with a bitter smile. "Are you trying to help him, Lord?" Dale swung his fist and gave a mocking smile. "You're not my match." Wang Ting's calm voice came from under the cape. "Ha ha ha, this lord is quite confident." Dale laughed. He strode towards Wang Ting and said, "Try it then." Before he finished speaking, he had already raised his arm. Black-red light shimmered around his fist as he punched at Wang Ting. Wang Ting shook his head. He lifted his hand from beneath his long sleeve to welcome the attack. It was just a normal punch, but the air around it started erupting. Dale was flabbergasted. However, his fist was already in the air, so he couldn't retract it anymore. He furiously released the force in his body and moved it to his fist. Bang! The two fists collided, giving off a loud explosion. A figure flew out. Fart! Dale smashed onto the ground and covered his chest. He vomited a mouth of blood. The hotel turned silent immediately. The 5-star soldier-level Dale got defeated by a single punch. Even more, the Lord didn't seem to have used his force just now. He solely relied on his physical strength. This was appalling. Everyone was in disbelief. They felt enlightened. No wonder Rodney called him Lord. Chapter 501, The Secret of Combining Forces. The mixed bloods stared at the figure covered in the black cloak. They were bewildered. Based on the attack just now, the ability of this formidable character had exceeded all the mixed bloods present. But they didn't know when this unknown formidable character had appeared in their race. He was extremely powerful, so he shouldn't be unknown. Everyone stared at Rodney curiously. He was the one who brought this figure here. No one knew this mixed blood better than him. Seeing everyone's gaze, Rodney suddenly felt proud and self-satisfied. "H, how dare you look down on me? Now you know who's the smart one." A sense of pride appeared in his heart. He was the one who had discovered Lord Zi Wang and went under his wings. Although the process wasn't smooth. He ignored everyone's gaze and lowered his head to look at Dale. He felt relieved and invigorated. Dale noticed Rodney's gaze, and a flash of embarrassment appeared on his face. He didn't think that the Lord Rodney brought was truly a powerful character. After the exchange of blows just now, he knew that this warrior was formidable. He was in no way ordinary. Wang Ting scanned his surroundings. All the mixed bloods took a step back unconsciously. "Can you prepare a room for us?" A calm voice came from below the cape. Yes. The red-nosed elder behind the counter replied hurriedly. He took the keys and quickly walked out from the counter, leading the three of them to the second floor personally. The crowd only dared to hold Dale up after the three of them left. "Dale, are you fine?" someone asked in concern. "I'm fine." Dale shook his head and wiped the blood off the corners of his lips. His expression was ugly. "Where did that formidable warrior come from? I've never seen him before. Who knows? Maybe he came from another city. Rodney is lucky. He managed to find such a powerful leg to hug. Chimph, who knows how long his luck will last? We used to have one or two formidable warriors, but they got caught by the purebloods and became their slaves. That man might not escape a similar fate." Sigh. Everyone started discussing but still ended up sighing. They felt dispirited. The room turned silent. On the second floor, the red-nosed elder led them outside a door and said respectfully, "This is the best room we have. Sir, please don't mind it." "It's all right," Wang Teng replied nonchalantly. "Sir, Dale had no bad intention. Please don't mind him." The red-nosed elder hesitated before he opened his mouth. "As long as he doesn't come and provoke me, I won't look for him. But if this happens another time, I might not hold back." Wang Teng glanced at him and said, "Yes, yes." The red-nosed elder nodded fervently. A drop of cold sweat dripped down his forehead. "My lord is benevolent, so he doesn't want to haggle over this issue. Tell him to understand the situation before he acts next time. Don't offend people he shouldn't." Rodney scoffed. "You should understand his situation and know why he's so sensitive to the word lord. Don't squabble with him," the red-nosed elder said. Rodney snorted again but kept quiet. The red-nosed elder sighed before leaving. Wang Ting disregarded their conversation and brought Ziyi into the room. Rodney opened his mouth behind him but didn't say anything in the end. After they entered the room, Wang Ting scanned the place and said to Ziyi, "We're outside, so we will sleep in the same room. You can take the bed." Ziyi looked at the only bed in the room and tilted her head. She suddenly asked, "Aren't you sleeping with me?" Wang Ting had taken out a drink. When he heard the question, he suddenly spurted out his drink. "Phut, cough, cough, don't talk nonsense. I need to cultivate." "Right, I need to cultivate." "Oh." Ziyi looked at him strangely. She didn't understand why he had such a huge reaction. This person was weird. Wang Ting sat down cross-legged on the sofa and closed his eyes. He focused on his attributes panel. Earth Force *50, dark. This was the attribute bubble he picked up from the mixed blood called Dale just now. It wasn't a pure dark force or a pure earth force. It was a mixed force. Is it because he's a mixed blood? Wang Ting thought to himself. He found this interesting. However, after the mixed force entered his body, it naturally split into dark force and earth force. It didn't exist as a compound. When the two forces split, Wang Teng caught a hint of the magic of mixed forces. He believed that he would be able to grasp the concept after picking it up a few more times. Wang Ting immediately remembered the move he had created called the Flaming Sword Tornado. It was a combination of different attributes too. He succeeded in using it once, but there was a high chance of failure. He almost failed during the martial arts competition the previous time. If he could grasp the secret of mixed forces, he could raise the success rate and grasp this concept completely. This meant that he would need the help of those mixed bloods. Those poor guys didn't do anything, yet trouble came looking for them. The mixed bloods might not know that Wang Ting had his eyes on them. Wang Ting touched his chin and gave an evil smile. However, he retracted his smile immediately because he found it a little sinister. He coughed awkwardly and stopped thinking about this matter. He started cultivating. The next day, the three of them left the hotel. Wang Ting had turned back into Viscount Snow. He brought the other two to the manor of the lord of this city. The City Lord Manor was a majestic ancient building covering a huge area. The sun was in the sky, but it still gave off an eerie feeling. As they were walking, Ziyi suddenly stopped. "What happened?" Wang Ting asked in surprise. Ziyi pulled Wang Ting's sleeve and pointed at a stone wall outside the manor. There was a notice posted there, and many people were looking at it. Wang Ting was curious. He brought them over and used his power to disperse the crowd. Feeling his strong power, the dark apparitions had no choice but to clear a path for him. Although furious, they didn't dare to speak up. When Wang Ting saw the content of the notice, his face turned black. F***K, that black incubus devil lord is so troublesome. Wang Ting cursed in his heart. This was a warrant for Wang Ting. His painting was pasted on the notice as well as some descriptions. This warrant had already spread to all the cities in the Darkland, meaning that almost all the dark apparitions knew that a human had entered their world. The warrant also said that if someone found Wang Ting, they would receive a reward from Black Incubus Devil Lord. Whether they wanted power or wealth, they would be able to get it. Chapter 502. What should I do when I'm surrounded by dark apparitions? This is very urgent. I need an answer. Wang Ting's face turned darker as he read the content on the warrant. Damn it, what's wrong with her? She's forcing him to a corner. On the other hand, the dark apparitions were excited. They started discussing happily. There's a human in our world. Ha ha ha, as long as we catch that human, we can get a reward from the Devil Lord. That's the reward of the Devil Lord. If I get it, I can definitely become a formidable character. Ch. Find that human first if you want that reward. Greed appeared in the eyes of all the dark apparitions. Their eyes turned red, and they dispersed instantly. They had decided to start looking for Wang Ting. How would they feel if they knew that the human in the warrant was just standing beside them at this moment? It was dark under the lamp. No one would have thought that Wang Ting would come to Black Crow City blatantly. When Wang Ting looked at the crazy dark apparitions around him, his head suddenly turned numb. F***K, these dark apparitions were mad. Their eyes were like a beggar who suddenly saw a piece of fat meat. It was horrifying. Wang Ting couldn't help but shiver. What should I do when I'm surrounded by dark apparitions? This is very urgent. I need an answer. He was on the brink of tears. He felt like a sheep that had entered a pack of wolves. He was going to get torn into pieces and eaten soon. It was so frightening. Lord, are you all right? Rodney asked cautiously. I'm fine. I just want to have a moment of silence for that human. It's a tragedy that he landed in the Darkland. Wang Ting sighed and said in a pitiful tone. That's right. This is an order given by Black Incubus Devil Lord personally. That human's fate is ominous. Rodney shook his head and replied. Cough. Wang Ting coughed and glared at Rodney with a dangerous look. Old Rod, you should be careful with your words. Feeling an evil gaze landing on him, Rodney shivered uncontrollably. He was confused. Did he say something wrong? Why was Lord Z Wang looking at him like this? Lord, did I say something wrong? Rodney asked carefully. Old Rod, don't you think mixed bloods like us are similar to that human? In the Darkland, we have no command over ourselves. We are pathetic, Wang Ting said. Yes, you're right. Rodney nodded, but he was still puzzled. What was the link? Thus, don't say that his fate is ominous. That is inauspicious. We should pray that he will escape soon, Wang Ting said in a meaningful tone. Yes, you're right. Rodney was stunned for a moment. The Lord's point of view was strange. However, he still nodded in agreement and continued smoothly. That human will definitely get out of his desperate circumstances and leave this place safely. Wang Ting patted his shoulder in satisfaction. This man is worthy to be taught. Ziyi glanced at Wang Ting strangely from the side. She was the only one who had seen Wang Ting's true appearance, but this young girl was smart. She didn't say anything when she saw his drawing on the warrant and only asked him to take a look. Wang Ting winked at her and said, Come, let's visit the lord of the city. He brought the two of them to the gates of the city lord's manor. Before they came, Rodney had introduced this place to him. Black Crow City was a sacred city. A sacred city meant that there were at least 3 general stage formidable warriors guarding this huge city. Multiple towns were built around the sacred cities, depending on them for survival. Together, they formed a district. Every sacred city had different dark apparition races controlling it. This Black Crow City was controlled by one of the 13 vampire races, the Gangrels. The Gangrels were an extremely ancient vampire bloodline. Their history went a long way back, and they had multiple indomitable ancient devils supporting them. However, Those presences rarely appeared in the world. They were normally in hibernation and would only wake up when their race was facing annihilation. Of course, this was what Rodney said. No one knew the exact situation. Wang Ting highly suspected that the power of these ancient vampires had exceeded the general stage. They must be terribly frightening. But he had no evidence. The strongest martial warrior of the human race was a 13-star high-tier general. He wondered if anyone had gone further than that. As he was thinking about this, they had arrived at the gates of the manor. "Who are you?" the vampire guard shouted. "Please inform the city lord that Viscount Snow from Greystone Town will like to meet him." Wang Ting took out the emblem that represented his identity as a viscount. "Please wait for a moment." The guard turned and entered the manor. After some time, the guards opened the door and led the three of them in. "Follow me. The city lord is waiting for you at the drill ground," the guard said. "The drill ground?" Wang Ting was puzzled. The guard didn't reply to him. Wang Ting's gaze flickered. He glanced at Rodney. Rodney was a smart person too. He immediately understood Wang Ting's intention and stuffed a few dark force stones into the guard's hand. The guard weighed the stones and smiled. He said, "You came at the right time. The city lord has gathered all our fellow vampires and is preparing to send them to search for the human. If you can earn his favor, you might gain many benefits." Wang Ting asked more questions regarding the city lord until they arrived at the drill ground. The drill ground was at the back of the ancient manor. It was the size of a stadium, and many powerful vampires were gathered here. The guard brought the three of them in front of a podium and said respectfully, "Sir, Viscount Snow is here. You can leave." A calm voice came from the podium. A handsome middle-aged vampire with a pale face was leaning against a large comfortable chair. He appeared relaxed and had the arrogance and indifference of a vampire. Wang Ting felt a strong presence from his body. This city lord was at the general stage. City lord. Wang Ting had already hidden his ability as he greeted the middle-aged vampire with the formalities of the noble vampire races. "You must be a descendant of a side family, right? I have no impression of you," the middle-aged vampire said. "Yes." Wang Ting nodded. The vampire had already checked Viscount Snow's status and knew that he was from a side family. He had no background or foundation, so he was already lucky to be able to be a carefree viscount in the remote Greystone town. There were many vampires around him. When they heard that he was from a side family, a flash of disdain appeared in their eyes. "Why are you looking for me?" the middle-aged vampire asked. "My lord, I've heard that a human has invaded our world, so I came to see if you have any orders," Wang Ting replied. "You're smart." The middle-aged vampire smiled slightly. "Since you've come, you can stay." "Thank you, my lord." Wang Ting appeared elated. He retreated to the side respectfully. The other vampires looked at him with hostility. Everyone wanted to take their share of the loot when it came to looking for the human, including the city lord. They wanted to get some benefits from following the city lord, but they didn't want a fellow from the rural areas to join them. "Lord, we don't know how powerful Viscount Snow is. If he's too weak, he might drag us down." A 7-star soldier-level vampire went up to the city lord directly, disregarding Wang Ting who was at the side. "Oh, what do you think we should do?" the middle-aged vampire asked with interest. "How about he has a duel with someone here? We can see his ability then," the vampire replied. "What do you think?" The middle-aged vampire looked at Wang Ting. "I have no objections." Wang Ting raised his eyebrows and glanced at everyone intently. "All right, let's have a duel then." The middle-aged vampire chuckled. "In that case, I'll have a test of the Viscount's ability." The 7-star soldier-level vampire smiled. "Okay." Naturally, Wang Ting agreed. The two of them stood in the middle of the drill ground. The 7-star soldier-level vampire said, "I won't show any mercy. It's not too late for you to admit defeat now." "I won't show any mercy either. Pray for yourself," Wang Ting said. The 7-star soldier-level vampire's face turned dark. He remained silent and moved instantly. Black light shone around him as he disappeared on the spot. He soared down on Wang Ting like a huge bat. Wang Ting raised his head, meeting the vampire's cold gaze. He curled his fingers into a claw and pushed it up. Netherworld ghost claw. Hiss. A ray of black light appeared and caught the vampire's body, tearing him in half. One move and the vampire was torn into two. Blood splashed on the drill ground. Wang Ting took a few steps back, and not a drop of blood landed on him. All the vampires present froze. They stared at him in astonishment. Chapter 503, Discussing how to catch myself with the dark apparitions. The sudden gruesome scene caused the vampires present to stand there in a daze. At first, they thought that it was just a simple duel. They didn't know that this Viscount Snow with no background was such a ruthless character. He was brutal right from the start. Even the vampires who were known for their cruelty and heartless character were shocked. The middle-aged vampire on the podium was stunned too. "Oh no, I'm sorry. I seem to have used a little too much force accidentally." An exaggerated voice was suddenly heard. All the vampires looked at the person who spoke and felt speechless. Shameless. Vampires were known for their strong physique, but he tore one into two pieces. Was this using a little too much force? It was on purpose. This bastard must have done it on purpose. The same thought appeared in everyone's mind. Suddenly, they understood. Viscount Snow was giving them an opening gambit. They looked at Wang Ting furiously. The middle-aged vampire on the podium sized up Wang Ting with interest. This brat is a tough character. But with his temperament and ability, why isn't he famous? Doubts ran through his mind. However, he didn't bother about it. He felt that this Viscount probably chose to keep a low profile until his ability had reached a certain stage. As for that extreme performance just now, he felt that this young generation just wanted to leave a good impression on him. This action was understandable since he came from a side family with no background. Wang Ting secretly glanced at the middle-aged vampire and smiled. He had reached his motive. Then, he looked at the torn body of the vampire. A few attribute bubbles were floating there. Dark Force *260 Advanced Stage Dark Talent *45 Spirit *40 Bewitch *10 Wang Ting raised his eyebrows. Not bad. As expected, these were all pureblood vampires. Their talents were high, and they possessed the bewitch skill too. It was worth killing this vampire. The middle-aged vampire didn't hoard onto the issue. He waved his hand and said, "All right, we have ascertained Viscount Snow's ability. Let's talk about searching for the human now. I don't want other sacred cities to get this good opportunity." When the dark apparitions heard him, they couldn't care about making things hard for Wang Ting anymore. Nothing was more important than searching for that human. As for the body that was torn into half and lying on the ground, no vampires cared about him. He was dead, but there was another one to replace his position. Not one more and not one less. It was perfect. This is the portrait and the characteristics of the human. Take a look at it. The middle-aged vampire waved his hand and a beast-skin scroll appeared out of nowhere. It flew down towards the vampires. All the vampires gathered around the scroll. Wang Ting pretended that he was curious too. He joined the crowd and looked at the beast-skin scroll. "Hey, this human is even more handsome than our race." One of the vampires suddenly frowned. "Indeed. Does this human have our blood? Maybe. How can those stupid humans be so handsome?" Wang Ting. Wang Ting felt like cursing when he heard the vampires talking about his handsome appearance so seriously. Why were the dark apparitions paying attention to this? Was this the time to discuss who was more handsome or whether he had vampire blood? Although he was honestly handsome, that wasn't the main point. The main point was how to catch him. No, wait. He didn't want to get caught. He almost forgot his identity after pretending to be a dark apparition for so long. Cough. The middle-aged vampire coughed awkwardly. Honestly, the human's appearance also made him unhappy, but this wasn't the time to talk about it. He said, "Based on the news from the Devil Lord, this human is extremely powerful. He killed general stage dark apparitions and is suspected to possess fire, lightning, earth, wind, and even space talent. As for the other talents, it had yet to be confirmed. He's also a rune master and possesses high rune mastery." The vampires below turned serious when they heard this. This human was so strong. He had even killed general stage dark apparitions before. They were definitely not his match. It looked like they could only be in charge of searching him. The ones fighting would be the lords. The Devil Lord exerted a lot of effort to drag this talented and powerful human into the Darkland. Hence, we must catch him and not let him escape. If not, we won't be able to answer to the Devil Lord, the middle-aged vampire continued. Lord, since the person is able to kill general stage dark apparitions, we might not be able to stop him, one of the dark apparitions said. You are only in charge of scouting. Once you find him, report immediately. Bring along the communication token. Once you're discovered his whereabouts, send out the information. I or the other 2 general stage lords will rush over immediately, the middle-aged vampire replied. Wang Ting felt exasperated when he listened to the dark apparitions seriously analyzing how they should catch him. Moreover, he was part of the discussion team. Damn it, it feels exhilarating and fun to discuss how to catch myself with a bunch of vampires. He could boast about this for 3 days when he went back to Earth. However, the vampires felt worried when they heard this. They exchanged glances with one another. Based on the City Lord's words, they might get killed if they were discovered by that human. It's not too late to leave now if you don't want to participate, the middle-aged vampire said. The vampires were in a dilemma. Everyone wanted the Devil Lord's reward, but if they lost their lives, everything was useless. Furthermore, even if they did get some rewards, they would only get a small portion of it. Most of it would belong to the general stage dark apparitions. The desires that were ignited by the reward died down, and many vampires started backing off. Lord, I suddenly remember that I promised my elders to pick some bloodscake herb. I think I can't participate on this search mission. A vampire hesitated before voicing out. All right. The middle-aged vampire was unexpectedly easygoing. He asked, is there anyone who wants to leave? The other vampires stood still. No one chose to back out. Since there isn't anyone else, you can leave alone. The middle-aged vampire spoke to the vampire that wanted to leave. Yes. The vampire heaved a sigh of relief and turned around. Suddenly, a red light pierced through his forehead. His body turned stiff, and confusion appeared in his eyes. Then, he slammed into the ground. The middle-aged vampire on the podium kept his finger. His expression was calm as if nothing had happened. Wang Ting felt his brows jumping. As expected of a dark apparition, he was ruthless towards his subordinate too. Dark Force *210 Advanced Stage Dark Talent *20 Spirit *36 Bewitch *8 He gained these attribute bubbles without doing anything. Wang Ting picked them up happily. He hoped that the City Lord could kill a few more vampires, but that was impossible. Well, unless he went crazy. All right, you can leave. Organize your men and start searching for the human. I hope that you can bring me good news. The middle-aged vampire waved his hand. Yes, all the vampires replied in unison. Chapter 504, Unexpected Attribute Bubbles. Leaving the drill ground, Wang Teng and a group of vampire dark apparitions walked towards the Mixed Bloods' holding place. It was impossible to bring Mixed Bloods to see the City Lord as their statuses were too low. Other vampires had their own vampire servants as well, which was why Wang Ting was not the only one headed to the holding place. However, these vampires excluded Wang Ting and were not walking together with him. It was like how the main family branch would naturally discriminate against the side families. As for the holding place, it was actually just a piece of empty land. The purebloods never cared about the mixed bloods and would naturally not treat them well. Before Wang Teng approached them, he heard a loud quarrel. A group of mixed bloods was gathered together, but he didn't know what they were doing. Not catching a glimpse of Rodney and Ziyi, Wang Teng frowned and walked over quickly. In the center of the crowd, Rodney was lying on the ground with a pale face, unable to get up. There was a tall and sturdy mixed blood, with a collar on his neck, grabbing little Ziyi's hair. He dragged her around and smiled grimly. Where did this brat come from? How dare you be so rude to me? Let me go. Let me go. Ziyi struggled desperately, using all her limbs and snarling at the burly mixed blood. However, with just a fling from him, Ziyi was thrown far away. She couldn't touch him at all. Bang! Ziyi fell onto the ground with a pale face, but she gritted her teeth and didn't make a sound. She just glared at her opponent. The other mixed bloods were laughing and seemed to think that this was fun and interesting. As Wang Ting approached, he saw this scene, and a cold light flashed across his eyes. The mixed bloods saw the vampire dark apparitions walking over and gave way. Wang Ting helped Ziyi up, looked at her pale face, and asked softly, "Are you okay?" Ziyi didn't say a word and shook her head stubbornly. "What's going on?" Wang Ting turned and asked Rodney on the ground. When Rodney saw Wang Ting, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. He slowly propped up his body and explained the situation to him. It turned out that the conflict was all because of the collars on the necks of these mixed blood slaves. The collars were not just a symbol of a slave, but their lives depended on it as well. There were runes on the collars. Once a slave rebelled, their masters could detonate it, and the slaves would have their heads blown up. Rodney and Ziyi were both slaves, but they didn't have slave collars. Upon seeing that, the mixed bloods felt unfair and began stirring up trouble. Rodney and Ziyi were alone, and they were not as strong as the other mixed blood slaves. They could only suffer a beating. While Wang Ting was understanding the situation, the other vampires were leaving with their slaves. They didn't care about the conflict at all. Wang Teng's face became dark, and he said coldly, "Did I let you go?" The vampires stopped in their tracks and frowned. "What do you mean? Hand over the mixed blood who did this to them," Wang Teng demanded. The burly mixed blood's facial expression changed drastically, but his master laughed. "And if I refuse? Do you wish to be torn in half as well?" Wang Ting looked at him coldly. The vampire dark apparition's heart jumped, but he was annoyed that he was actually frightened by him. His eyes became gloomy. "Boy, think about your status. You're just someone from the side family. Do you think we will be scared of you? Then you should try to see if I dare," Wang Ting said lightly. "You." A trace of fear flashed across the vampire's eyes, and he turned to the other vampires. "What do you say? Your mixed bloods were also a part of it. Let's go. Don't care about him. If he dares to do something, we will kill him together," the other vampires said indifferently. The burly mixed blood's master smiled carkily and turned to leave with the other vampires. Boom. Wang Teng didn't say another word and stomped on the ground, speeding towards the vampires. A black light flashed across his body, and he brought out the strength of a 9-star soldier level. Oh shit. The vampires didn't think that Wang Ting would actually do it. His strength had reached the 9-star soldier level, which was stronger than them. Their faces changed, and they split up, trying to evade Wang Teng's attacks. "Are you planning to leave?" Wang Ting made a bold move and appeared on the head of a dark apparition in a flash, sending a kick fiercely down to his head. Boom. In an instant, the vampire was plunged into the ground, with only his head above the surface. The rest of the vampires were stunned. Wang Ting didn't give them time to react and rushed to another vampire, striking him with a fist. "Bastard, are you not afraid of the people behind us?" The vampire shrieked with a pale face. "Why would I be scared?" Wang Teng's fist landed on his stomach, sending him flying a few meters away. The vampire fell to the ground. It was unknown if he was alive or dead. The other vampires were stupefied. Their eyes were filled with horror as they kept retreating. Wang Teng followed them closely. Wait, we will hand the mixed blood to you. Deal with him as you please." Seeing the ruthlessness of Wang Teng, they immediately chose to give in. "I'm sorry. You have pissed me off, so I have to teach you a lesson." Wang Teng laughed coldly. "Damn it, why did it turn out like this?" Boom, boom, boom. Wang Ting was never merciful towards dark apparitions. Each hit was a heavy blow, and he pummeled them while they were pinned down on the ground. However, this time around, he didn't kill the vampires. After all, this was a vampire's territory, and the city lord still counted on them to do things. If he killed them all, the vampire city lord would probably be after him. Before he could leave the Darkland, he had to survive first. After some time, Wang Ting stopped and let out a sigh of relief. "Damn, I have endured you lot for a long time. How does it feel to be beaten for once?" Ziyi gazed at him with gleaming eyes. Her eyes were shining with a faint glow as she clenched her fist. She wanted to beat up these bad guys too. Wang Ting lifted his head and looked at the mixed bloods around him. The mixed bloods immediately took a step back, especially the burly mixed blood. His face was filled with fear and utter regret. Why did he give the two mixed bloods trouble and offend this devil? They didn't expect that a vampire would do anything for a mixed blood. "You, come over," Wang Ting shouted at the burly mixed blood. The burly mixed blood couldn't help but glance at his master, but he was already unconscious and buried in the ground. "I called you over. Are you deaf?" Wang Ting asked. "If you want to kill me or cut off my limbs, I'll do everything you say." The burly mixed blood's face and neck went stiff. "Weren't you full of energy just now when you were bullying the child?" "Stop pretending to be gutsy," Wang Ting said with a cold stare. "If you're not here by the count of 3, don't blame me for being ruthless." The burly mixed blood looked aggrieved as he finally walked over. In the Darkland, they already understood something. You could offend anyone but the purebloods or death awaited you. He was the one that hit you. "He's all yours now," Wang Ting lowered his head and told Ziyi. "Lend me a blade." Ziyi's eyes became fierce and malicious. Wang Ting wasn't surprised. To have survived so long in the forest alone, Ziyi was not just some weak child. He took out a dagger from the space ring and passed it over. Ziyi took it and walked step by step towards the burly mixed blood. The mixed blood knew what she was going to do. His eyes quivered, but when he saw Wang Ting standing at a distance, he didn't dare to move. Ziyi walked to his front. Only as tall as his thigh, she raised her head and looked at him. "Kneel." The burly mixed blood was exasperated. This little girl wanted to stab him, but he still had to kneel down for her. How frustrating. But he didn't dare to disobey her. Ziyi saw the kneeling burly mixed blood and stabbed him with the dagger fiercely. Slash, slash, slash. 3 stabs later, blood was spewing out of the burly mixed blood's belly. His face started turning pale. At the same time, a few attribute bubbles dropped. "Huh." Wang Ting couldn't help but exclaim. Not only did the burly mixed blood drop some attribute bubbles, but Wang Ting also saw an attribute with an extremely peculiar color dropping out of Ziyi's body. He picked it up. Luck *1 Wang Ting was taken aback by surprise. There's even such an attribute bubble. Luck. If I pick up the luck attribute and increase it, will I turn into the son of Lady Luck? But the problem was, why did Ziyi drop the luck attribute bubble when she killed someone? Chapter 505, Heart of Zhongyan. Wang Ting looked at Ziyi, who was beside him, and rubbed his chin in deep thought. He had the illusion that he struck the lottery due to the appearance of the luck attribute. He pulled out his attributes panel. There was another row below the spirit and enlightenment row. Luck, 10, limit of a normal person, 10, Wang Ting's eyes lit up. The limit of a normal person was 10, and his luck attribute was at the maximum. That meant that he had reached his limit. But he immediately thought of something. This was the number after adding little Ziyi's 1 point of luck. That meant that he had 9 points of luck at the start. 9 points were high enough. No wonder his luck was almost not bad. He thought that it was because he was fair and handsome. Now that it was 10 points, his luck would only get better. This was amazing. However, he wondered if little Ziyi's luck attribute would get affected after she dropped 1 point. He had thought about this question before. Force attributes and battle technique attributes could all be increased through cultivation. If someone dropped them, they could recover them slowly. But attributes like spirit and enlightenment couldn't increase through cultivation. If they were dropped, could they be recovered? Luck attribute was in this category too. Would Ziyi's luck decrease permanently after she dropped a point? This had to be verified. Since Ziyi would stay beside him, he had enough time and chances to observe and study the results. Cough, that was a little over the top. He wasn't that kind of person. He treated Ziyi like a kind and loving brother, but dropping luck attributes after killing someone was a little strange. Wang Ting couldn't understand the logic. He picked up the attribute bubbles dropped by the burly mixed blood silently. Huh! Wang Ting was stunned once again. He picked up 2 attribute bubbles within this short time and got stunned twice. Earth Force *50, Dark, Heart of Zhongyan *1. The mixed forces on that mixed blood wasn't important. The main thing was the Heart of Zhongyan. This was good stuff. As the attribute bubble merged into his body, Wang Ting immediately felt the changes. At the same time, he gained knowledge of it in his mind. The Heart of Zhongyan was an extremely rare earth element special physique. People who possessed this physique were exceptionally sensitive to earth force. They even possessed the ability to control rocks and soil. Many images appeared in Wang Ting's mind. In those images, there was a vast land with sparse plants. Huge rocks littered the land. The people there had gotten used to the environment and developed a special talent. They were born tall and burly. They could control soil and the stones, gathering them over their bodies and turning themselves into stone men. This was a powerful defense as well as a strong offensive skill. The more rocks and soil one gathered, the larger the stone structure around the body became. 10 meters or a few hundred meters were no problem for them. In those images, there were giant stone men that could lift the sky and possessed terrifying strength. They could shift mountains and fill the seas. After some time, Wang Ting regained his senses. He was still in awe. He let out a long sigh. At this moment, he could only think of one word: impressive. This was incredibly amazing. The race in the images was a heaven-defying presence, but it was unfortunate. Their ending was predictable. Their world was destroyed by the dark apparitions, and they were turned into slaves. There weren't even any pure bloodlines left behind. Only mixed bloods could be found. What a pity. Wang Ting looked at the burly mixed blood in front of him and suddenly found him a little tragic. He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. There were some things he couldn't change alone. Thinking about it, this burly mixed blood's talent was not bad. If not, he wouldn't have possessed the Heart of Zhongyan. Wang Ting touched his chin, his eyes shimmering. The burly mixed blood felt a little uncomfortable because of his gaze. This pureblood's gaze was so chilling. He looked as though he was going to do something nasty to his body. He had heard that some purebloods had special fetishes. Could it be? The mixed blood's face turned green. When he thought about those disgusting images, his 125 kilograms muscular body shuddered. Then, he shuddered and shuddered again. Do you know that the consequences of offending me are very serious? Wang Ting smiled as he opened his mouth. Sir, my name is Kuan Shan. What should I do for you to let me go? The burly mixed blood felt a drop of cold sweat on his forehead. He lowered his head and asked Wang Ting carefully. Could it be that the pureblood would only let him go after doing that thing? I haven't thought about it. Wang Ting walked in front of the unconscious vampire who was the master of Kuan Shan and gave him a tight slap. Wang Ting had used a lot of force, so his face turned swollen. The other party woke up in pain immediately. He looked at the smiling Wang Ting in a daze. Fear started to creep up his eyes. What do you want to do? Don't come over. I want that mixed blood. Wang Ting tilted his head and looked at him. What do you think? Kuan Shan got depressed when he heard this. As expected, this pureblood had his eyes on his pure body. Take him. Take him. He's yours, the vampire shouted without thinking. Give me the key of the slave collar. Kuan Shan's master gave the key to Wang Ting without any hesitation. This was a small rune key. There was nothing special about it, but as a rune master, Wang Ting knew that it was the real thing. Wang Ting nodded in satisfaction. It looks like you're quite sensible. I'll let you go this time. You're welcome to provoke me again. The vampire felt frustrated and furious, but he didn't dare display it. Ignoring him, Wang Ting turned to Ziyi and asked, Is there anyone else that bullied you? Ziyi nodded. Go on. You should put an end to some things. If you can take revenge now, don't leave it overnight. If not, you won't be able to sleep well, Wang Ting said. Ziyi's eyes lit up. She nodded as she digested his words. She walked towards the other mixed bloods. This time, she didn't use the dagger. She just gave everyone 3 small slaps. The slaps were loud and crisp. The mixed bloods didn't dare to resist. They obediently allowed the young girl to slap them. Wang Teng was disappointed for a second when he saw no new attribute bubbles. However, these mixed bloods were of a different race from Kuan Shan. The members of the Zhongyan race were tall and muscular. The muscles on their bodies were as hard as rocks, and they had bald heads. They were very easy to recognize. Wang Teng didn't think that he would pick up the heart of Zhongyan from others. However, these mixed bloods were all a bunch of treasures. They belonged to different races and might give him some rare attributes. He could get some benefits from them. Chapter 506. This is how Wang Teng does things. Of course, the focus now was to farm attributes from the Zhongyan race. Wang Teng's gaze landed on Kuan Shan, his eyes filled with a fiery passion. Kuan Shan, who looked dumbfounded, suddenly shuddered. I am done for. Now that he was in the hands of a pureblood that had some kind of peculiar habit, his future would be bleak. If that pureblood made any excessive demands, would he obey it? Or would he obey it? Kuan Shan was deep in thought, taking the problem very seriously. Then, he was consumed with despair. Let's go. Wang Teng called, leading the way out of the manor. Lord, I can't move anymore, Rodney said awkwardly. Wang Teng glanced at him. He then retrieved a healing medicine from the space ring and threw it towards him. Rodney didn't hesitate and swallowed it immediately. Soon after, there was a look of surprise in his eyes as he felt that he could now move, even though his injuries were still serious. Thank you, my lord. Rodney crawled up from the ground. Zi thought about it for a while before stepping forward to hold him up. The few of them then proceeded to leave the manor. Kuan Shan also accepted his fate and followed along. In a pureblood hotel, it was time for their meals. Wang Teng got the hotel owner to prepare some food. The food came quickly. Although it wasn't a feast, it was still edible. Wang Teng and the rest ate while a hungry Kuan Shan's stomach rumbled like thunder. This immediately attracted everyone's attention. Kuan Shan's face turned red. Take the collar off. Sit down and eat. Wang Ting threw the key to him. Kuan Shan was astounded. There was an indescribable expression on his face. Did this pureblood just throw the key of the slave collar to him? His heart felt unreal. However, the two mixed bloods around him didn't have the slave collars as well. A sudden realization hit Kuan Shan. Is this pureblood a fool? If you don't want to take it off, you can return the key to me, Wang Ting said lightly. Kuan Shan didn't know why he did that, but the opportunity was in front of his eyes. He would be a fool to give this up. He gritted his teeth and decided to get the collar off before anything else. With a click, the slave collar fell. Kuan Shan was lost. A burden was removed along with the collar, and he felt at ease, like a bird who had just escaped from its cage. He clenched his fist. There was a flash in his eyes as he walked towards the pureblood in front of him. If I kill him now, can I escape? Are you trying to see if you can kill me? Wang Teng seemed to have seen through him and smiled. Rodney raised his head, a hint of ridicule apparent in his eyes. If this guy tried to do something to Lord Zi Wang, he wouldn't even know how he died. Kuan Shan's heart jumped, and he shook his head embarrassedly. I wouldn't dare. There was a trace of disappointment in Wang Teng's eyes. Then sit down and eat. Don't make me repeat for the third time. Kuan Shan sat down, speechless. He didn't know if it was an illusion that the pureblood actually wanted him to do it. After finishing his meal, Wang Ting wiped his mouth and took out a small jade bottle, placing it on the table. Eat. Seeing the black spiritual Dan inside the jade bottle, Kuan Shan's eyebrows twitched. Rodney couldn't help but gloat. It looked like he wasn't the only one. Everyone else was the same. This was how Wang Teng did things. What's this? Asked Kuan Shan. A spiritual Dan that strengthens your body. Wang Teng lied through his teeth. Rodney secretly glanced at the blatant liar and acted like he knew nothing. Do you think I will believe you? Kuan Shan's mouth twitched. Even if you don't, what can you do? Wang Teng laughed. You're right, I can't refuse. I knew it wasn't this easy. Kuan Shan sighed and didn't probe further, swallowing the spiritual Dan. Very good. Wang Ting nodded with satisfaction. Introduce yourself. I'm a descendant from the Zhongyan clan, and I'm at the 7-star soldier level. Kuan Shan gave a simple introduction. How many of your kind are in Black Crow City? Wang Ting asked, finally revealing his true intentions. Kuan Shan was slightly taken aback. Around 40 to 50. Not bad, not bad. Wang Ting's eyes lit up. I'll give you a day's worth of time. Gather them together. It shouldn't be a problem. Yes. In Black Crow City, I'm the strongest of my clan. It won't be hard gathering them, but, Kuan Shan hesitated. What are you planning? You don't have to know the details. Just know that I won't kill them, Wang Teng replied lightly. In fact, if you can gather them, I can even give them a little benefit. What benefit? Dark Force stones or spiritual Dan? What do you people want? Dark Force stones. Kuan Shan exclaimed. Sure. Wang Teng nodded. I'll bring them over at night. Kuan Shan finished speaking and turned to leave. Wang Ting watched his departing back, and his eyes flashed. Lord, that guy was stabbed thrice by little Ziyi. What if he harbors a grudge? Rodney cautioned. Don't worry. If he's thinking of anything sinister, it'll make him regret being born. Wang Ting smiled. Seeing the smile, Rodney's heart went cold. Lord, did you gain anything from the manor? Rodney asked again. Do not ask what you shouldn't ask. Wang Ting glared at him. Yes, yes. I talk too much. Rodney smiled awkwardly. Wang Teng retracted his gaze, his mind wandering. He had naturally gained something from the journey to the manor. He had found out where the dimensional rifts were, and if he wanted to get close to them, he would need a long-term plan. In the afternoon, Wang Teng stayed in his room, studying the heart of Zhongyan. There were a few stones placed on the ground. Suddenly, the stones floated up and shattered into pieces. Then, they flew towards Wang Teng's arm and congregated above it. Instantly, a rock arm was formed. It was like a piece of armor. Wang Teng clenched his fist. He didn't feel any blockage, feeling like an extension of his arm. It was amazing. His strength had increased. The arm had a strong defense ability too. Is this the ability of the heart of Zhongyan? This is outstanding. Wang Ting muttered to himself. He only had 1 point of the heart of Zhongyan talent, but he was already able to use it briefly. This proved how extraordinary the Zhongyan talent was. Heart of Zhongyan, 1/10,000. If I can raise this talent to the limit, it must be formidable. The image of mountains shifting and seas filling up with rocks appeared in his mind. It felt incredible just thinking about them. He had high hopes for the potential of the heart of Zhongyan. At this moment, someone knocked on the door. Rodney walked in. Lord, Kuan Shan has brought the others here. Chapter 507, The Excellent Way of Collecting Wool. In the backyard of the hotel, Wang Teng saw members of the Zhongyan clan gathered by Kuan Shan. There were 47 of them. The Zhongyan clan members looked similar to Kuan Shan. There were female members as well. They had big heads, their bodies were large and squarish, and their limbs were thick like pillars. The only difference was that they had hair. If their appearance was already like this, Wang Ting didn't dare to imagine them without their hair. How disgusting. At least King Kong Barbies would still have appearances of a Barbie doll, but the faces of these Zhongyan clan females were squarish with edges and corners just like rocks. Among these people, Wang Ting even saw a familiar person, Dale. That was the mixed blood that Wang Ting previously beat up in the hotel. He didn't know what his identity was in the beginning, but now that he knew about the Zhongyan clan, he had no other doubts. Dale and Kuan Shan looked similar. Although they didn't have similar appearances, there was this familiarity about them. As long as one saw them, one would immediately know that they were from the same race. While Wang Ting was sizing them up, the Zhongyan members were doing the same to him. To be honest, if it wasn't for Kuan Shan, the Zhongyan clan members wouldn't have been willing to meet Wang Teng. After all, his appearance now was that of a pureblood, and mixed bloods had never trusted them. Dale didn't recognize Wang Teng, but he recognized Rodney and Ziyi who were standing by his side. A hint of uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Why are these two people together with this pureblood? Weren't they following around that Zi Wang? Could it be that Zi Wang was actually a pureblood? Dale suddenly thought of something as if he had understood it. He decided to expose those traitors once he got back. He never thought that Zi Wang and the pureblood in front of his eyes were actually the same person. Wang Teng didn't know what Dale was thinking, and even if he did, he wouldn't care. Whatever he was thinking or planning, it wouldn't affect him at all. He then cleared his throat. Ahem, since everyone is here, let me explain why everyone is here. The crowd's eyes were attracted to him in an instant, only to see Wang Ting taking out a dagger and passing it to Zi Yi. He smiled. I'll give 10 dark force stones to anyone who is willing to be stabbed once by her. Once the crowd heard that, everyone was thrown into confusion. Even Zi Yi looked at him blankly. She didn't understand why she was going to stab them. They didn't bully her at all. Lord! Kuan Shan's face was twitching. Although he knew that this pureblood wasn't a good person, he didn't expect him to be such a sadist. Oh, you can participate too. Wang Teng reacted in time. Kuan Shan. Is this a problem of whether I want to participate or not? Several dozen lines of wrinkles formed on Kuan Shan's head. He felt as if he had fallen into a deep pit, the one that he could never get out of. Can I not participate? He asked. Obviously not. Wang Teng's expression was telling him that he was thinking too much. Kuan Shan. At the same time, the other Zhongyan mixed bloods started discussing softly. 1 stab and they could get 10 dark force stones. Although the dark force stones were tempting, it wasn't a good feeling to be stabbed once. In the end, there were some that couldn't resist the temptation of the dark force stones. In reality, with the regeneration abilities of the Zhongyan clan, a stab would just amount to a small injury. The wound would recover in 2 days without even applying the medicine. Kuan Shan was stabbed by Zi Yi 3 times in the morning, and now there were only 3 faint scars left. For their clan, the stronger one was, the better their regenerative abilities. The first to step forward was a female mixed blood. She asked hesitatingly, will we really get 10 dark force stones if we get stabbed once? Wang Ting was a little surprised. Were the females of the Zhongyan clan manlier than the males? At this time, the other mixed bloods started talking softly. It's Kuan Ya. Well, her child has just been born. If you count the previous 5, there are many mouths for her to feed. She would definitely need many dark force stones to survive. With a few stabs, we can dozens of dark force stones. That's enough for us to spend for 3 months. When Wang Ting heard that, he suddenly realized and nodded. That's right. The dark force stones are here. You can collect them once you get stabbed. Of course, there's a limit to 3 stabs per person. Once he finished speaking, he waved his hand, and a pile of dark force stones appeared on the table by the side, forming a small mountain. The mixed bloods immediately started breathing faster. There were so many dark force stones. If he wasn't able to defeat them, they would have tried to snatch the stone from him. Lord, can't I get a few more stabs? My body can handle it, the mixed blood named Kuan Ya asked. Wang Ting. What the hell? Did Zhongyan members like being abused? The request was too much. If he didn't agree, it would make him seem petty. Well, you can. But there needs to be a limit. Up to 5 stabs per person. Wang Teng was not benevolent. He just thought that if these mixed bloods overdid it, it would not be good for him and his sustainable wool collecting plan. But don't worry about it. There will still be opportunities next time. I'll look for you again in 2 days. As long as you are willing, I won't be stingy with these dark force stones. After hearing Wang Teng's guarantee, Kuan Ya heaved a sigh of relief and walked to Zi Yi. Little girl, stab me. Zi Yi was a little stunned. She couldn't help but look at Wang Teng. All the best. It's up to you. Wang Teng encouraged her. Stab well. I'll treat you to good food tonight. Kuan Shan and Rodney's expressions turned weird and strange. Zi Yi nodded and didn't hesitate, plunging the dagger into Kuan Ya's stomach. Splurt. Fresh blood spewed out. The scene was magnificent but weirdly ridiculous. Kuan Ya frowned, her face slowly turning pale. Zi Yi stabbed her thrice before stopping. She then turned to look at Wang Ting. Don't stop, continue. Kuan Ya wasn't satisfied and hurried her. 2 more. Wang Ting was speechless. Ziyi nodded and stabbed her twice again with some conviction. Kuan-Ya's complexion was a bit pale. She exerted the force in her body, and the wounds started healing. She didn't bleed anymore as she collected the 50 dark force stones with joy and returned to the crowd. Wang Teng's eyes flashed. Seeing a few attribute bubbles falling onto the ground, a smile formed on his lips. He picked them up. Earth Force *45, Dark, Heart of Zhongyan *1 Luck *1 It's here. It's you, the luck and the heart of Zhongyan attribute. Wang Teng was cheerful and silently gave himself a compliment. This was an excellent way to collect some wool without any problems. He had already grasped the key point. Ziyi dropped the luck attribute because she made the Zhongyan mixed bloods drop the rare heart of Zhongyan attributes, not because she stabbed someone. This made her expend her luck attribute. Wang Teng guessed that Ziyi's luck attribute was not permanently lost. It was just temporary and would be restored soon. Previously, Wang Teng was puzzled. With Ziyi's young body and no cultivation, how did she survive alone in the forest for so long? She wasn't eaten by beasts, not dying of illness, or poisoned to death. Now he understood. It was definitely because her luck attribute was off the chart. Every time she encountered danger, she would always drop the luck attribute, turning crisis into opportunity. The only difference was that previously, no one would pick them up when the attribute bubbles dropped. They would disappear and be wasted. Now, Wang Teng was collecting them and reducing waste, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Anyone else? As the thoughts flashed across Wang Teng's mind, he raised his head. Seeing how Kuan-Ya had reaped the benefits without suffering so much, the other mixed bloods couldn't take it any longer. Me. 2 mixed bloods stood up immediately. How many? Wang Teng asked. 5. The 2 mixed bloods were ruthless and chose to get stabbed 5 times. Ziyi stepped forward to execute it. Earth Force *80, Dark, Heart of Zhongyan *2 Luck *1 Next, the other mixed bloods also came forward, one after another. After about 2 dozen people, Ziyi's luck attribute no longer appeared. The mixed bloods also stopped dropping the Heart of Zhongyan attribute. Although it was a bit regretful, Wang Teng knew that he had reached the limit for today. Alright, that's all for today. We'll continue in 2 days. Wang Teng stood up from the chair and stretched his back. Ah, my lord, why is it over? It's not our turn yet. The remaining mixed bloods who hadn't had their turn cried out. Don't blame me for not grabbing the opportunity. Wang Teng shook his head and kept the dark force stones. The mixed bloods didn't dare say anything, their faces filled with regret and grief. Those who had had their turns felt fortunate and delighted with the force stones they obtained. They had already forgotten the pain of being stabbed. Wang Teng had a huge gain this time. He couldn't help but take out his attributes panel. Luck, 31, limit of a normal person, 10, Heart of Zhongyan, 26 10,000. His luck attribute had soared to 31 points, far exceeding the limits of a normal person. Heart of Zhongyan had also increased by 26 points. He felt that he could control more rocks and that the power would be stronger as well. This was the feeling of becoming stronger. Suddenly, Wang Teng thought of something. His luck attribute had increased so much, so why not try it himself? Hee. Well, since you are so unwilling to leave, I'm touched. So, Wang Teng said suddenly. Standing by the side, Kuan Shan's mouth twitched. What did he mean by he was touched? His fellow clan members were also out of their mind. They were actually begging to get stabbed. Wang Teng continued, let's change it up. For every punch of mine, you can get 1 dark force stone. The limit is 10. Anyone wants to participate? The ones that didn't have their turns were slightly taken aback. But they soon reacted and squeezed their way forward. Me. Kuan Shan was flabbergasted. They had gone mad. His clan members had gone mad. Their brains must have been fried. Chapter 508, Vampire Race Ciphertext and Shadow Merging Secret Skill Luck, 36, Limit of a Normal Person, 10, Heart of Zhongyan, 35 10,000. After sending the mixed bloods from the Zhongyan clan away, Wang Teng took a look at his attributes panel and felt extremely satisfied. Sometime later, Kuan Shan came back. His face was a little swollen and he was looking at Wang Teng as if he were a devil. His clansmen were bruised and swollen just like him. Was it worth 10 dark force stones? It was worth it. The status of mixed bloods in Darkland was very low. It was very hard for them to earn dark force stones. Even if these mixed bloods possessed strong abilities, they wouldn't be able to get the treatment they deserved. It was normal for some purebloods to catch these mixed bloods and turn them into slaves. Hence, to them, the seemingly brutal request by Wang Ting wasn't that hard to accept. Some mixed bloods even thought that this vampire was a fool. If not, why would he do something so stupid? In summary, both sides felt that the other was stupid, and both sides got what they wanted. It was a win-win situation. At night, in the hotel room, Wang Teng experimented with the effects of the heart of Zhongyan after his points had increased. He was gathering rocks and soils around his body. At this point, he was able to cover all his limbs, and the power was naturally a few times stronger than before. But that was it. With his current ability, this level of stone armor wasn't of much use. It might not be able to withstand a blow from a 9-star soldier-level warrior. Little Ziyi looked at him with interest at the side. She felt curious and wanted to learn it too. Wang Ting looked at her expression and smiled. Waving at her, he asked, "Do you want to learn?" Little Ziyi nodded. "I'll teach you. However, I won't teach you this one. I'll teach you other skills," Wang Ting said. Ziyi had been following him for the past few days. Wang Ting noticed that she seemed reliant on him and also discovered her luck talent. Thus, he decided to groom her properly. He believed she would offer great help to him in the future. Wang Ting was never stingy towards the people he trusted and who followed him. Let's start from the basics. Well, take one step at a time. Wang Ting started guiding Ziyi. Ziyi's talent exceeded Wang Teng's expectations. She understood most of the things after learning them once, and her progress was astonishing. It wouldn't take long for her to cross the martial disciple gate and become a martial warrior. 2 hours later, she was in deep sleep. Wang Teng looked at her and smiled like a father. Then, he closed his eyes and immersed himself in his own cultivation. The sky was pitch black. The pale red moonlight shone in through the window. Suddenly, a shadow started moving in one of the dark corners. The shadow created by the moonlight suddenly elongated and expanded. It started baring its teeth and brandishing its claws. Everything happened silently. Wang Teng's eyes were closed. His expression was calm, and he seemed focused on his cultivation. Suddenly, the shadow on the ground stood up and pounced on Wang Teng. Wang Teng opened his eyes instantaneously, a sharp gaze shooting out from the depth of his eyes. His spiritual power stabbed out like a real dagger. The black shadow froze for a second. The next moment, Wang Teng acted at the speed of lightning and punched the black shadow. Bang! The black shadow flew out instantly. However, when he slammed into the wall, he merged into the darkness and disappeared. Wang Teng stood up and scanned the calm surroundings. Little Ziyi woke up in shock, staring at him in a daze. "Wait here," Wang Teng said. Swoosh! The shadow lunged at him from another corner. The sharp claws formed from shadows glimmered with a red glow. It was aimed at Wang Teng, wanting to tear him apart. Wang Teng looked at him intently and activated his 8th-level devil scripture. His entire body was covered with black light, mysterious black patterns dotting his entire skin. In the Darkland, he could finally execute his dark skills to the fullest. Then, he released his fist. Boom! A frightening power exploded instantly. Ah! The black shadow gave a shrill scream. It exploded, and a figure fell out from within, slamming heavily onto the wall. It was an old vampire. Flabbergasted, he looked at Wang Ting in disbelief. "You're not at the 9-star soldier level. You're at the general stage. Who on earth are you? You have so much bullshit." Wang Ting strode forward and clawed at the dark apparition's throat. The expression on the vampire's face changed. Black light shimmered around him. He wanted to sneak away. Trying to escape. Wang Ting sneered. He appeared in front of him and grabbed his throat. The black light around the dark apparition dissipated and couldn't congregate again. The vampire's face turned red, and it made a gagging sound because it was suffocating. "Who sent you?" Wang Ting asked him coldly. The vampire's throat was clenched tight, so he couldn't make any sound. He could only look at Wang Ting pleadingly. "Oh, I'm sorry. Am I grabbing a little too hard?" Wang Ting showed no signs of letting go. His tone was insincere too. About to pass out, the vampire was rolling his eyes. The old vampire felt exasperated. "Don't you want to know who the mastermind is? Why are you grabbing my throat so hard?" He felt that he was about to die. His vision turned black, and he was starting to lose consciousness. This Viscount Snow was ruthless. He was going to strangle him to death. Suddenly, a strange red light shone in Wang Ting's eyes. It shot right into the vampire's eyes and controlled his consciousness. Finally, Wang Ting let go, allowing the vampire to fall to the ground. The guy started belching. After some time, Wang Ting knew the identity of the mastermind from his mouth. It was the ex-master of Kuan Shan. The other party bore the grudge and found a 9-star soldier-level elder in his clan who was skilled at assassination. He wanted to kill Wang Ting to take revenge for what had happened in the morning. Seeking death, Wang Ting muttered to himself. A cold glint appeared in his eyes. He thought that those vampires wouldn't dare to find him again, but it hadn't been a day and someone had already come to take his life. At this moment, the old vampire regained his consciousness. He asked in bewilderment, "Did you just use bewitch on me? You have no value anymore." Wang Ting's gaze was indifferent. He slapped the vampire's head. Unwillingness appeared in the vampire's heart. Regret and other complicated emotions wafted up too. His vision turned black, and he went unconscious permanently. A few attribute bubbles floated up. Dark Force *260 Spirit *120 Vampire Race Ciphertext *60 Shadow Merging Secret Skill *1 Wang Ting kept the bubbles, his eyes shining brightly. Vampire Race Ciphertext. Shadow Merging Secret Skill. These were two extremely rare attribute bubbles. In an instant, many memories of words surged into Wang Ting's mind. They were an ancient ciphertext belonging uniquely to the vampire race. Wang Ting immediately remembered the treasure map he received that was said to belong to one of the vampire's ancestors. The words on it were similar to these vampire race ciphertext. Chapter 509. Clone. There wasn't time for him to ponder over it as another memory floated into his mind. This was a memory of the cultivation method for shadow merging secret skill. A ray of light appeared in his mind and reproduced the cultivation process perfectly. It would turn into a shadow occasionally and travel in the darkness. It was hard to gauge its position. Wang Ting's eyes lit up. He immediately understood the skill and grasped the shadow merging secret skill. This shadow merging secret skill would allow him to merge into any shadow like what the vampire did and conceal himself perfectly. In the past, Wang Ting used his dark force to hide in the darkness. However, there was a huge difference between these two methods. The shadow merging secret skill was obviously more profound. Wang Ting was elated. He looked at the corpse of the old vampire lying on the ground and suddenly felt gratitude towards him. He specially came to send him this secret skill. What a good vampire. Also, he didn't feel as furious towards Kuan Shan's ex-master as he did previously. After all, he had sent this vampire who had the shadow merging secret skill and the vampire race ciphertext to him. But even though he was thankful, he still had to kill him. Those two things didn't affect each other. Wang Ting turned to Ziyi, who was still looking at him with wide eyes. He regained his composure and kept the corpse of the vampire. Then, he said to her, "Go to sleep. It's all right." Oh. Ziyi trusted Wang Ting entirely. When he said that it was all right, she believed him and went back to sleep. Wang Ting shook his head. He remembered something and took out the treasure map from his space ring. He started translating it based on the vampire race ciphertext. Matter Mountain Ridge. Wang Ting was in deep thought. He muttered to himself, could it be that this treasure map is real? Based on the recordings on the treasure map, this ancestor of the vampire race hid his treasure in the depth of the Matter Mountain Ridge. As for what the treasure was, it remained unknown. Wang Ting's gaze shone a few times. Then, He threw the treasure map into a corner in his space ring. The most important thing was to return to Earth. The others could be dealt with later. Of course, that would only happen if he could still return to the Abyss world after he went back to Earth. Anyway, this ancestor of the vampire race must be very frustrated. If another vampire race member got the map, there would be great bloodshed. Numerous vampires would fight for this treasure, but it had landed in Wang Ting's hands. The treasure might lay there forgotten. The next day, Wang Ting came to look for Rodney. Vampires love to consume fresh blood. Is there any slaughterhouse for star beasts in Black Crow City? Rodney was stunned for a moment. He nodded and replied, yes, a huge bunch of powerful and rare star beasts will be sent here every day. After they are slaughtered, they will be sent to the manors of the various noble vampires. Lead the way. Wang Teng was elated. However, he remained calm on the surface. Rodney didn't know what he wanted to do. He just nodded. Wang Ting followed Rodney to the west of the city. Very soon, he saw a huge slaughterhouse. Shrill screams and howls of star beasts came from within. A strong stench of blood could be smelled too. Wait for me outside. Wang Ting walked directly into the slaughterhouse after he finished speaking. He was a vampire, so he had the right to enter many places. The slaughterhouse was one of them. A portion of the blood produced here would be sent to the different vampire manors while another portion of it would be sold. Other vampires could come here to buy the blood. Viscount, do you have any orders? Wang Ting's Viscount identity was put to use here. The giant apparition in the slaughterhouse spoke to him respectfully the moment he saw him. The Black Crow City was governed by the vampire race, but there were dark apparitions from other races living here too. The giant apparition was tall and huge. It was cruel and bloodthirsty in nature. Hence, butchering was the most suitable job for him. Bring me around, Wang Tung said calmly with his hands behind his back. All right, follow me. The giant apparition led the way with his lofty body, passing through many rooms. Star beasts were being slaughtered in the different rooms, and their blood was released. The giant apparition started introducing his slaughterhouse to Wang Teng as if it was his treasure. Wang Teng collected the attribute bubbles scattered in his surroundings as he listened to him. Dark Force *130 blank attribute *105 blank attribute *90 Dark Force *108 blank attribute *100. It had been a while since he saw blank attributes. Coming here was the right choice. Wang Teng was elated. These star beasts were all dark star beasts. Hence, they possessed the Dark Force. Wang Teng didn't care about that. The blank attributes were his main motive. To return to Earth, he needed a huge number of blank attributes to increase his ability. If not, it would be hard to execute his plan. Half a day later, Wang Ting left the slaughterhouse. The giant apparition was a little stunned as he sent Wang Ting off respectfully. This vampire viscount wasted half of his day, but he didn't buy anything. One could imagine how frustrated and bitter the giant apparition was. However, Wang Ting was too powerful, so even though he was bitter, he couldn't do anything to him. Wang Ting pulled out his attributes panel and smiled. Blank attribute, 3560. In this short span of time, he had received more than 3,000 points of blank attributes. It would have been so troublesome if he had to kill the star beasts himself. How smart of him. He was so smart. Wang Ting complimented himself in his heart. His blank attributes could reach 10,000 after coming to the slaughterhouse a few more times. That would be enough to support his plan. Hence, for the next few days, Wang Teng would visit the slaughterhouse whenever he had the time. The giant apparition almost went mad. This viscount came every day but never bought anything. Was he making a fool of him? But when he remembered the aura this vampire leaked accidentally, the giant apparition got scared. All right, there's no need to send me. I'll come again tomorrow. Wang Ting waved his hand at the main door and left directly. You're coming again. The giant apparition looked at his back view and had a breakdown. However, Wang Teng didn't come the next day. He had enough blank attributes. The vampires were all looking for him, so he mustn't waste any more time. If he got caught, he would be dead. Wang Teng used his blank attributes on Darkness Clone Technique and Shadow Merging Secret Skill. Darkness Clone Technique, 5000 perfected, Shadow Merging Secret Skill, 5000 perfected. Once these two special skills reached the perfected realm, Wang Teng finally felt more confident. At this moment, a black light was shimmering around Wang Teng. A wisp of black smoke floated out from his body and turned into a clone. It had Wang Teng's real face. He smiled and said, "Go ahead. You sent me to death the moment you called me out. You're so ruthless." The clone sized up his body before speaking angrily. "Hey, don't bother about the details. You won't really die anyway." Wang Teng waved his hand and said, "All right, you're the true form and I'm the clone. There's nothing I can do about it. Leave it to me. I'll make sure the dark apparitions won't notice anything," the clone said. After he finished, he merged into the darkness and disappeared. "It's up to you now." Wang Teng smiled. Chapter 510. The plan was a success. The next day, Wang Teng left the city disguised as Viscount Snow. Then, he pretended to discover the humans' traces in a forest nearby, and a huge battle erupted. Yes, this was what happened. Viscount Snow wasn't the opponent's match, so he sent the reinforcement signal to the City Lord. Black Crow City, City Lord Manor. 3 black rays of light shot up into the sky and slashed through the horizon like arrows. They flew towards a certain direction outside the city. Not long after, a vampire army dashed out of Black Crow City. It was a huge scene. Wang Teng asked Rodney and Ziyi to stay in the city. When they saw the huge commotion, they felt a little anxious and doubtful. At the same time, many mixed bloods also noticed the vampires' movements. They came out of their houses and looked at the back views of those vampires as they discussed in low voices. Outside the city, explosions rang out in the air. The general stage apparitions were very fast. They were shooting towards the spot where the human was discovered like lightning. The 3 general stage vampires in the city had moved simultaneously. In the air, they exchanged glances with one another. Their eyes were brightly lit. They didn't expect the human to be found in Black Crow City. The reward from Black Incubus Devil Lord was within their reach. Even as general stage vampires, they felt a little excited. After all, once they reached the general stage, they needed a large number of resources to further their cultivation. Every single rise in level was difficult. Hence, they would never give up this amazing chance. Boom, boom, boom. Loud explosions suddenly came ahead of them. The 3 general stage vampires were elated. They dashed towards that direction immediately. Boom. A figure slammed onto the ground amidst a loud eruption and the flashes of lightning. Dust flew into the air. In the sky, a figure covered in lightning was hovering in the air. The powerful lightning attack came from this person. He seemed to have felt the 3 powerful presences closing in at high speed. Glancing at the figure on the ground, he abandoned the opponent he was fighting with and turned around to escape. When the 3 vampires arrived, they saw a figure surrounded by lightning charging into the grey primary forest in the northwest direction. The dust on the ground dispersed, revealing Viscount Snow's figure. He was covered with wounds, and there was blood at the edge of his lips. He hurriedly shouted at the 3 general stage vampires, "That is the human. His lightning force is extremely strong. I can't stop him. Don't let him escape. It's all right. Since he came to Black Crow City, he won't be able to run," one of the general stage dark apparitions said confidently. "Wait for the reinforcements here and lead them to surround the forest just in case. Don't let the human escape," the other general stage vampire ordered. "Yes," Viscount Snow said. The 3 dark apparitions stopped talking and chased after the figure. The Viscount Snow looked at them as they left. A mysterious smile appeared at the corner of his lips. Soon, many vampire troops arrived at the scene. Their leaders were the vampires Wang Ting saw in the City Lord Manor. When those vampires saw Viscount Snow, their expressions changed, jealousy flickering in their eyes. This side family member had found the human. How lucky of him. The 3 sirs asked you to surround the forest to prevent the human from escaping, Wang Ting spoke arrogantly. He looked like a small man intoxicated by success. "How did you find that human?" a vampire stood out and asked. Envy filled up his eyes. This was the ex-master of Kuan Shan. "That has nothing to do with you. You should do your things properly first." A cold glint appeared in Wang Ting's eyes as he refuted directly. "You." The vampire was furious. He had many subordinates, so he wasn't afraid of Wang Ting. All right, catching the human is more important. Don't mess up the sir's orders," the other vampires spoke up to mediate the argument. Many of them had been beaten by Wang Ting and were infuriated too, but they didn't dare to create trouble at this moment. If the human ran away, they wouldn't be able to handle the wrath of the three sirs. The vampire led his subordinates to the forest in front with a snort. Killing intent flashed past Wang Ting's eyes, but he didn't act on the impulse. Just when the vampires were trying to catch the human outside, Black Crow City became exceptionally empty. At this moment, a black shadow sneaked into the city manor silently. From the black light on his face, one could see that this was Wang Ting. If the three general stage vampires saw him, they would get a shock. Weren't they chasing this human? Why was he here? Actually, this was Wang Ting's true form. The human outside and the Viscount Snow were both his clones. His perfected darkness clone technique allowed him to form two clones at once. Furthermore, his two clones had reached the 9-star soldier level in power. When Wang Ting was forming his clones, he realized his advantage. He possessed many forces, and most of them had reached the 9-star soldier level. Also, he had Imperial Realm spiritual power, which allowed him to form two clones that weren't much weaker than himself. These two clones would have his battle techniques and his battle awareness. They were stronger than normal 9-star soldier level martial warriors. Wang Ting asked the two clones to perform a show outside the city to attract the three general stage vampires and the other powerful vampires away. That way, he would be able to go to the dimensional rift in the manor. After all, he felt scared to be in this place filled with dark apparitions. It was better to leave as soon as possible. Wang Ting executed his concealing skills and sneaked into the manor. He had already found the position of the dimensional rift a few days ago. He possessed space talent, so the intense fluctuations of the dimensional rift wouldn't escape his senses. The dimensional rift was right below the manor. Wang Ting found a random vampire guard and got the information about the entrance of the underground passageway from him. Silently evading the guards in the underground passageway, he felt his way into the underground space. A long and dark tunnel appeared in front of him. Wang Ting merged into the darkness and reached the end of the tunnel successfully. Suddenly, he saw a faint glow of light. He thought that this was the dimensional rift, but when he took a closer look inside, his eyes widened in surprise. The ground was filled with all kinds of force stones, countless precious ores, and an array of rare treasures. Wang Ting would never think that this was the place the vampires kept their treasures. Even more, they seemed like unimportant things, piled here like trash. It was almost the size of a hill. It was astonishing. Chapter 511, Space Rune Array. Oh my, so many rare treasures. Wang Ting's eyes were shining. He was so amazed that he cursed uncontrollably. He was rich. He scanned the area with his spiritual power and realized that there were no dark apparitions guarding this place. They didn't seem to care about these treasures. Wang Ting moved forward unconsciously. He saw many different element energy stones of different sizes in that pile of treasure. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth. The energy stones for these 5 elements were the most common. Then, there were green stones, purple stones, ice blue stones, and many more. They were lesser in numbers, though. Even rarer were wind, lightning, and ice element energy stones. These energy stones were giving off different intensities of light, meaning that their purity was different. Besides energy stones, there were piles of star beast star cores in different colors and attributes. The force fluctuations were different too. Some were strong while others were weak. Wang Ting even saw star bones. There was a small pile of it giving off a glittering shimmer. Then, there were ores, spiritual flowers, spiritual herbs. How much money were they all worth? Wang Ting's hands trembled unconsciously. His breathing got heavy, and he took a deep breath to calm his emotions. He would be disappointing his goddess of luck if he didn't take these treasures in front of him. He glanced around him before taking out a different space-storing gadget. He stuffed the treasures on the ground continuously into the space gadget. At this moment, Wang Ting suddenly felt fortunate that he kept his opponent's space gadgets whenever he killed a formidable warrior. Normally, he wouldn't need to use them, so he wouldn't wear them on him. He would throw them in his space ring. By right, a space gadget couldn't be kept in another space gadget. However, Wang Ting had space talent, and he was a rune master to boot. Hence, he had his ways of solving this issue. He created a rune box that could block off all space fluctuations. He placed the space gadgets in the box before storing them in the space ring. This way, there was compatibility between the space gadgets, and they wouldn't reject one another. Wang Ting was rushing for time, so he didn't count the treasures. He just swept them over with his spiritual power into the various space gadgets. Finally, all the space gadgets were full to the brim. He almost couldn't keep all of the treasures. Looking at the empty stone room, he clapped his hands in satisfaction. Nothing was left. This was a sense of satisfaction for cleaning a place so thoroughly. Wang Ting didn't linger any longer and turned to leave. This wasn't where the dimensional rift was. He circled to another tunnel and continued searching. After some time, Wang Ting frowned. His expression turned serious. Strange, it's around here. Why can't I find it? Time was tight. If he didn't find the dimensional rift, the 3 general stage vampires might catch him when they came back, like catching a turtle in a jar. Wait, he wasn't a turtle. Wang Ting scanned the underground space with his spiritual power, inch by inch. However, the spatial fluctuations were too scattered, so he couldn't find a gathering point. Hence, he couldn't confirm the exact position of the dimensional rift. I searched everywhere, but there's nothing. Could there be a hidden space? Wang Ting thought to himself. Hidden space, that's right, it's runes. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. He stepped on the ground and turned into lingering shadows, dashing towards the huge stone room where he found the treasures at the start. There were signs of runes there. At first, he thought that they were protective runes. After all, no matter how unconcerned the dark apparitions were regarding these treasures, they would have some protection after piling them here. If not, once the energy in the treasures disappeared, they would lose their purpose and become real trash. Thinking back about it, the treasures might be a decoy. The next moment, Wang Teng's figure appeared in the stone room suddenly. He shifted his spiritual power to his eyes. A ray of holy light shot out of his eyes abruptly as he scanned the room. The ground, the walls, and even the roof, he didn't miss a single spot. Found it. Wang Teng suddenly smiled. He went to a corner of the stone room and found some traces on the floor there. With his experience as a rune master, he finally found another hidden layer of runes within the protective runes. The person who carved these runes must be an expert. Wang Teng was astounded. He stopped wasting time and came in front of the runes. Frowning, he pondered for some time before he found the solution. His rune mastery wasn't just for show. The carver of this rune was an expert, but his rune mastery was obtained through the collection of attributes. Hence, his knowledge had no boundaries. He was more skillful than normal rune masters. He fixed his gaze and congregated his spiritual kineses on his fingers. Then, he stabbed his fingers forcefully at the center of that rune array. The two fingers turned gradually in the rune like a key. Suddenly, a mechanical sound resounded in the quiet stone room. Wang Ting's eyes lit up. The ground in front opened up, revealing an entrance. Dim lights could be seen underneath the ground. Indeed, it's here. Wang Teng's eyes brightened. He carefully entered the hole and climbed down the stone stairs. The stone stairs were long and didn't go straight down. There were many turns. Wang Teng was extremely careful. He completely merged with the darkness and didn't make a single sound as he walked. Very soon, he arrived at the bottom. A faint light shone ahead of him. He saw a pitch-black and endless dimensional rift pasted against the stone walls. Wang Teng was elated. However, when he saw the extremely complicated rune array beneath the dimensional rift, as well as 3 old vampire dark apparitions sitting cross-legged around the array, his emotions changed. This dimensional rift is formed from an array. There were many kinds of rune arrays. Hence, Wang Teng guessed that certain runes were able to create space power. However, he had never seen it before. There weren't many runes that could form space power. Also, very few rune masters could control them. But the rune array in front of him managed to form space power and even created this huge dimensional rift. It was astonishing. He mustn't look down on these dark apparitions. Wang Ting's gaze flickered, feeling emotional. The dark apparitions' history was too long, and they had destroyed many worlds. The amount of civilization knowledge they obtained was frightening. Most of the elite races valued their own old broomsticks, so they wouldn't let the real profound knowledge leak out. However, there would definitely be a bunch of dark apparitions that possessed this knowledge. At this moment, Wang Teng was pondering to himself. He scanned the 3 dark apparitions, and his gaze gradually became dangerous. If he wanted to go through the dimensional rifts, he must get rid of those 3 dark apparitions. The 3 dark apparitions might reverse the array after he went through it. As a result, he would be crushed into pieces by the unknown in that space. The last time, when Black Incubus Devil Lord pushed him into the dimensional rift, he didn't know what happened. All he knew was that he was seriously injured when he woke up. It was pure luck that he didn't die. He didn't want to experience it again. Chapter 512, Triple Kill. Wang Ting was hiding in the darkness, frowning and thinking hard. All kinds of thoughts flashed across his mind. Soon, he made a decision. These 3 dark apparitions have to be taken down at the same time. They must not have the slightest chance to react. Wang Ting's gaze was cold as he thought about it. The shooting star spiral silently sank into the darkness. The space fluctuated, and the shooting star spiral disappeared completely. One of the dark apparitions suddenly opened his eyes. He frowned as he glanced around in confusion. What's wrong? Another dark apparition couldn't help but ask. I seem to feel a trace of spatial fluctuation. The dark apparition replied with doubt. The other 2 dark apparitions became flustered and started to sense their surroundings carefully. They then shook their heads after a while. We didn't feel anything. Dimensional rifts are inherently unstable, and it is common for space fluctuations to occur occasionally. Maybe I'm thinking too much. The dark apparition shook his head. The 3 dark apparitions then closed their eyes once again. The silence was restored in the dark underground space. Wang Ting heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He was almost discovered. He didn't expect the 3 dark apparitions to be so sensitive to spatial fluctuations. His space skills were almost exposed by them. Wang Ting hesitated a little. Now that these 3 dark apparitions were so sensitive, even if the shooting star spiral was in line with the space talent, he might not be able to kill them. If he made a mistake, he would definitely alarm them and would have to fight them head-on. Let's wait. Wang Ting felt helpless. He didn't have any better ideas. He could only wait for them to let their guard down. As time passed, the 3 dark apparitions had great concentration like monks. Wang Teng was also extremely patient, like a poisonous snake lurking in the dark, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. Suddenly, Wang Teng's eyes focused, and he moved, lunging towards one of the dark apparitions. At the same time, a dark figure separated from his shadow and darted towards the second dark apparition. On the other side, a shooting star spiral shot out from the void, violently piercing between the eyebrows of the third dark apparition. Wang Ting actually launched fatal attacks on all 3 dark apparitions simultaneously. Roar! The third dark apparition felt the spatial fluctuations and opened his eyes. He first saw the cold light that was close to him and felt death right in front of his eyes. He then suddenly let out a roar. His palm slammed on the ground to retreat backward violently. However, the shooting star spiral's appearance was too sudden, and it was already too close to him, piercing through the center of his eyebrows. No. His eyes were filled with rage as he glared. An invisible force gushed out from in between his eyebrows, resisting the power of the shooting star spiral. Spiritual kinesis. As Wang Ting was pouncing on the first dark apparition, he had to divert part of his focus to manipulate the shooting star spiral. Feeling the resistance coming from the shooting star spiral, he was startled. Die. But then, his killing intent went through the roof, and his Imperial Realm spiritual kinesis power burst out. Driven by the Imperial Realm spiritual kinesis, the shooting star spiral pierced through the opponent's skull. Ah! There was a desolate scream. A dark apparition was dead. It all happened in a blink of an eye. Wang Teng didn't pay attention to the dead dark apparition. He was already facing the first dark apparition. His hands flickered with black light, and he slashed at the dark apparition's heart and temple. On the other side, the black figure that separated from his shadow was the Leitang clone he created. To make it, he had already removed the human clone that was outside the city. This would also mean that the 3 general stage dark apparitions would soon realize something was wrong and rush back. The Leitang clone's palm was flowing with the power of lightning, forming a palm blade. At the same time, it was surrounded with horrifying killing intent. It sliced off the head of the 3rd dark apparition. The killing intent had unknowingly reached 50% after picking up countless killing intents from warriors in the Star Maple City War. At this moment, the bursts and the impacts plunged the 3rd dark apparition into the horrifying killing intent of the clone. It was as though he was in a sea of blood and corpses. Even though he was a dark apparition, he was still astounded. However, he regained his senses in an instant. His spirit surged crazily, rushing towards the palm blade of the Leitang clone. Slash! The palm blade's lightning power shot up, slashed through the opponent's spiritual power, and struck his neck. Blood splattered everywhere as a vampire's head flew high up in the air. That vampire could never rest in peace. As for Wang Teng, his killing intent was overwhelming as well, but it didn't work this time around. His dark claw attack was actually blocked by his opponent. The vampire's spiritual power had reached the Emperor Realm, and his strength was even at the general stage. It recovered in an instant and retaliated before retreating with the momentum he had gained. Wang Teng's face was solemn, and a cold light flashed quickly across his eyes. He stamped on the ground and rushed towards the dark apparition again. After the Leitang clone was done with the 2nd dark apparition, it came over to kill the last one. The palm blade slashed towards his back. "You are that human," the dark apparition exclaimed. He abruptly turned sideways and evaded the Leitang clone's strike. "You guessed it. Your reward will be death." Wang Teng rushed to his front. His eyes were condensed with spiritual power, piercing his opponent's eyes. 8th-level Devil Scripture, activate. Black Wing Devil Mutilation Strike. Die. With a low roar, Wang Teng gave it his all. A black light enveloped his body, and a sharp and eerie black blade glow slashed through the air. The dark apparition was horrified and frantically tried to resist. However, he was unable to withstand both Wang Teng and his Leitang clone. Slash. Suddenly, his body went stiff, and a ray of cold light penetrated his heart. Shooting star spiral. How is this possible? His face was filled with disbelief as he slowly looked at the hole that appeared in his heart. There was deep resentment in his eyes. Sigh. Wang Teng watched the vampire collapse in front of him and let out a long breath. Triple kill. He had eliminated the 3 vampires that were guarding the dimensional rift. The ground was littered with multiple attribute bubbles. Wang Teng's eyes flashed, and he immediately went to collect them. Emperor Realm Spirit *105 Dark Force *230 Spirit Penetration *1 Emperor Realm Spirit *80 Emperor Realm Spirit *90 Space Rune Knowledge *50 Dark Force *320 Dark Force *260 Wang Teng didn't expect to encounter 3 dark apparitions with spiritual power here. Till now, besides Gorlin, he had never encountered anyone that had spiritual power. It was evident that divine spirit masters were rare. But he just met 3 in one go. If this was a face-to-face battle, he would not have been able to take these 3 dark apparitions down so easily. Then, bits of memories started surfacing in Wang Ting's mind. He couldn't help but be ecstatic. Spirit penetration. This was an extremely rare spirit technique, capable of directly attacking the spirit. No matter what creature, the spirit was extremely fragile. Once it was attacked, one would either be severely injured or dead. This was how terrifying this spirit technique was. There was also the space rune knowledge. After he gained the memories, Wang Ting immediately acquired a lot of ancient knowledge about space runes. These were things that the three dark apparitions learned in their lifetimes, and they were now easily available for him. Chapter 513. He can't find his way home. Without a doubt, spirit penetration and space rune knowledge were his biggest gains this time. However, the Emperor Realm spirit attributes that the vampires dropped were also good. The existence of the Emperor Realm spirit attributes was rare, and it was always challenging for Wang Ting to obtain them. The Emperor Realm and Imperial Realm spirit had a difference of 10 times. The total amount of Emperor Realm spirit would be a few dozen points of Imperial Realm spirit. This increase would be equivalent to Wang Ting collecting countless normal spirit attributes. After collecting the attribute bubbles, Wang Ting couldn't help but let out a sigh. Looking back on the battle just now, he felt a little lucky. The three dark apparitions possessed the spirit penetration technique. It was fortunate that they didn't use it, or he would have been in a pinch. If he didn't have his guard up, or if he was hit by spirit penetration, it would be extremely dangerous to him even though he had Imperial Realm spirit. Fortunately, he struck fast, and the three dark apparitions didn't have the time to use their strongest weapon in their haste. They died abruptly. Wang Ting's eyes flashed, and he entered into deep thought. Throwing the three dark apparition corpses into his space ring, his gaze shifted to the rune array on the ground. This is a spatial rune array. Wang Ting muttered and started analyzing it with the new space rune knowledge that he had just obtained. Those three general stage dark apparitions shouldn't have noticed the disappearance of my clones so quickly. Before I leave, let me leave them with a little present. Wang Ting stroked his chin, and a strange smile appeared on his face. He scanned his surroundings, and his spiritual power surged out. Several runes were engraved around the space rune array. The runes were independent and didn't interfere with the ones on the space rune array. However, Wang Ting left out a few nodes between the two. Once the missing nodes were filled, it would be equivalent to building a bridge between the two, and there, a spectacular magical reaction would occur. Wang Ting took out a few energy stones, passed them to the Leitang clone, and smiled. "I'll leave them to you. You're making me do such troublesome things again," the Leitang clone complained with a bitter face. "It's the last time, the last time." Wang Ting snickered and promised. "Forget it, leave quickly. The three general stage dark apparitions are coming back," the Leitang clone said. Wang Ting nodded and looked deeply at the Leitang clone. He didn't say anything else. Walking towards the dimensional rift, he leaped inside. "I'm going home." Hearing Wang Ting's cheer, the Leitang clone couldn't help but shake his head. He sat down and waited a few minutes before placing the energy stones into the nodes. Suddenly, the entire rune array flashed violently. Boom! The whole underground space quaked. The Leitang clone stood in front of the dimensional rift with a calm expression. Boom, boom, boom. The next moment, violent explosions sounded, and the light engulfed everything, swallowing the Leitang clone completely. The Leitang clone didn't move an inch as if it didn't hear any sound at all. He stood there calmly like he was posing for a picture. The three general stage dark apparitions didn't find Wang Ting. According to their senses, it was like Wang Ting had disappeared without a trace. They returned empty-handed, their faces distraught. There was nothing worse than catching someone and letting him escape. They got the other vampires to remain outside the city and continue searching for human traces, but they themselves returned to the manor first. While they were approaching and were about to land from the sky, a terrible explosion came from the manor below. "It's bad." The three general stage dark apparitions immediately knew that something was wrong, and their expressions changed drastically. However, it was too late. A dreadful shockwave shot up from the manor. The entire manor was overturned and flew into the sky. The shockwave from the explosion swept across the surroundings and up into the sky. The whole Black Crow City was attracted by the terrifying explosion, and everyone's eyes shifted towards that direction, filled with shock. A while later, the explosion stopped and the dust settled, revealing the state of the manor. What was once a magnificent and majestic building was reduced to ruins and rubble. It's gone, it's gone. Countless dark apparitions were appalled and dumbfounded. Looking at the crumbled manor, no one dared to say anything. The three general stage dark apparitions' complexions were extremely gloomy. Their eyes were filled with fiery rage, and they were gritting their teeth. Who did this? Who's the one who did this? No, something must have happened to the dimensional rift underground. One of the dark apparitions suddenly thought of something and rushed down immediately. The other two general stage dark apparitions followed behind. Their force surged out of their bodies, smashing all the surrounding rocks into pieces, exposing the underground location where the dimensional rift was. It's gone. The three general stage dark apparitions fell into dead silence. Once the space rune array was destroyed, the dimensional rift would naturally disappear as a result. There was no trace of the dimensional rift's existence here anymore. Their years of hard work was gone. The three divine spirit masters are gone as well. The three general stage dark apparitions scanned the place, and they didn't even see the corpses of the three divine spirit masters. They figured that they were basically dead. Find him. We have to find him. Even if we flip the whole Black Crow City upside down, we have to find the culprit. Find the culprit behind this. I will smash his body into pieces and drain his blood till his body is dry. The three general stage dark apparitions were enraged. In the next few days, there was an uncomfortable atmosphere surrounding Black Crow City. They searched vigorously and vowed to find the culprit who destroyed the space rune array. Wang Teng's clone, who was disguised as Viscount Snow, was still in this world and was summoned back with the other vampires to carry out a thorough search. But the results were expected. Wang Ting had already left the Abyss world, and they couldn't have found him. Escaping the Abyss world should have been a happy thing for Wang Teng, but it wasn't. Now, he was in a dark void, surrounded by darkness. There was only a little light at a distant place, flashing like a star. Wang Ting looked around in confusion, cold sweat forming on his forehead. He couldn't find his way home. What the F***K? What is going on? Based on the space rune knowledge he had obtained, the so-called space rune array was to fold the space and shorten distances. There would be a tunnel linking the two worlds, and you would have the effect of leaping through space. However, this space tunnel was only half of it. After Wang Ting rushed out of the tunnel, he came to this void and realized that the road ahead was broken. This is an incomplete space tunnel. A white light suddenly flashed across his mind, and his expression became painful. Chapter 514, The Corpse in the Emptiness. Why is this happening? Wang Teng's grieved shouts echoed in the silent and dead void. Anyone who heard it would feel his sorrow and cry for him. Unfortunately, in this place, there was no one else but him. Wang Teng forced himself to calm down quickly. Things had already happened, so there was no point crying over spilled milk. He needed to think of how to escape. His expression turned grave, and he sat down cross-legged on the spot, sitting quietly in the void like a spirit floating in mid-air. The entrance was destroyed by the explosion. He felt his head aching when he remembered that he had ordered his Leitang clone to do this. Gradually, Wang Ting closed his eyes. He went through all the space rune knowledge in his mind to search for a method to return home. In this void, there seemed to be no time. He didn't know how long had passed, but he felt a little hungry. He took out some food from his space ring. Fortunately, he kept a large amount of star beast meat and other food items in his space ring. Well, this was a good habit. The emerald glazed flame burnt in the void. Wang Ting used it to barbecue his meat. He placed his hand against his chin as he barbecued the meat. He sighed continuously. Sigh tilde sigh tilde sigh tilde, I'm so miserable. First, I got dragged into the Abyss world by Black Incubus Devil Lord. I put in so much effort to escape, but I dropped into the void instead. What a tragic life I have. Wang Ting started bemoaning his fate as he finished barbecuing his meat. He put it in his mouth and turned his sorrow into motivation for eating. He let out a satisfied burp after he finished eating. Then, he shuddered, and his expression changed. Damn it, he ate too much. He should eat less since he didn't know how long he would stay here. He mustn't waste his food. Wang Ting decided that he should ration his meal next time. After he finished eating, his gaze flickered, and he went into deep thought. He took out the space gadgets the 3 divine spirit dark apparitions had left behind from his space ring. He scanned them with his spiritual power. Found it. After some time, Wang Ting turned joyful. 3 leather booklets appeared in his hand. He opened them. As expected, there was some ancient space rune knowledge recorded inside. Wang Ting immediately started reading it. He filled up the loopholes in his knowledge and deepened his space rune mastery. The clock was ticking. Suddenly, at a spot close to Wang Ting, a violent spatial fluctuation arose. The brutal energy gushed out forcefully. Wang Ting immediately turned and saw many thin white cracks appear out of nowhere in the void. He felt gravity pulling him over. His expression underwent a huge change. He could sense a fatal danger, so he immediately rushed away, moving out of the territory covered by the sucking force. That was dangerous. At that moment, he understood the danger of the void. After some time, the suction force disappeared, and the thin white cracks patched up. Wang Ting frowned. He hesitated for a moment before he sat down cross-legged again to continue flipping through the 3 books. At one moment, Wang Ting's eyes lit up. He saw some interesting information on the void. There were many unknown dangers in the void. The thin white cracks just now were space cracks formed for various reasons. These space cracks were extremely unstable and destructive. If one was sucked inside, they would be torn into pieces no matter how powerful of a martial warrior they were. It was terrifying. Also, normal humans couldn't travel in the void. Only powerful warriors who had reached a certain level had the ability to do so. However, even a powerful presence wouldn't dare to loiter around the void. Once they accidentally entered a dimensional rift, they could leave, but to do that, they mustn't encounter any force explosions in the void or any sudden appearances of space cracks. The other kind of person who could travel in the void was people who possessed space talent, like Wang Ting. They wouldn't be rejected by the space here and could sense the hidden dangers too. Of course, these kinds of people were rarer than the formidable warriors who could travel in the void. Once again, Wang Ting felt fortunate. If he didn't possess space talent, with his entry-level general stage ability, he would probably be dead. Wang Ting spent much time before he finished reading the 3 books. His spirit and enlightenment were powerful, so his memory and understanding ability was also amazing, allowing him to remember all the information in a short time. After he finished, his expression wasn't good. I need to leave a space coordinate in the other world before I can find a path to leave this place. If not, I'm dead. Wang Ting hadn't left any space coordinates on Earth or on the Xingwu continent. Hence, he couldn't locate these 2 worlds. He sighed uncontrollably. This was bad. There was another method. When a dimensional rift appeared, he could forcefully widen the area of the dimensional rift and leave through it. But this method was too extreme. He could be shredded into pieces if an accident happened. Also, even if he was lucky and managed to leave, who knew where he would end up? What if he landed inside the sun? What if he went to an unknown world? What if he fell into a cesspit? Anyway, anything was possible. This method was the worst. He wouldn't use it unless there was honestly no other choice. Wang Ting ate some food and stood up. He decided to explore the area first. Well, he might find some other ways in this void. He headed in the direction where the space tunnel pointed to. He didn't know if it was right, but at least it was a direction. It was better than walking around aimlessly. Who knew? He might find a way out. He comforted himself as he walked forward silently. Very soon, he realized that when he was walking in the void, he could still use the force in his body, but it was sluggish. Fortunately, his spiritual power wasn't affected. If not, his movement would be slow. He didn't know how long he wandered. During this time, Wang Ting encountered many dimensional rifts and force explosions. Every single encounter was dangerous, but he managed to evade them in time with his space talent. However, in this quiet environment, Wang Teng gradually became silent. There was no one to talk to, and he could only search for his path aimlessly. The only thing accompanying him was the cold and silent void. Gradually, he felt tired. Wang Ting raised his head, his expression a little numb. He couldn't tell the time, but based on 1 meal per day, he had spent more than 3 months here. In these 3 months, he didn't find anything. He had already decided to give up. "This will be my last shot," Wang Ting sighed. Suddenly, he saw something from the corner of his eyes. His pupils moved. A huge shadow floated in the void. It was a distance away from Wang Ting. He wouldn't have noticed it if it wasn't so conspicuous in the void. Emotions started to appear on Wang Ting's numb face. His spiritual power surged out and pushed him towards the shadow quickly. As he got closer, Wang Ting's pupils constricted. It was a huge corpse. He predicted that it would be more than 10 meters tall if it was straightened. It floated in the void and maintained its original form. It didn't decay, so Wang Ting could still see its appearance. Its shape was similar to a human, but its head was strange. Its forehead was huge and was greenish-white. Overall, it looked very similar to a human. The other conspicuous part was the occult and complicated special mark on its forehead. What species is it? Wang Ting took a deep breath, feeling astounded. He flew above the corpse and looked down on it. He muttered to himself, "It should be dead." The moment he finished speaking, he saw the eyelids of the corpse moving suddenly. Oh my God! Wang Ting got a rude shock. He immediately went into defense mode and stared intently at the corpse. Its eyelids were indeed moving. Even its fingers were moving. This creature wasn't dead. Wang Ting was dumbstruck. How could this creature sleep in the void and not die? He couldn't imagine how it was possible. Suddenly, small droplets of light seeped out of the corpse's skin. It danced around the corpse densely. Wang Ting was stunned. He observed the light spots carefully and realized that there was a slim and beautiful creature in each of the light spots. Their antennas were short, and they had thin and colorful wings. They had a long circus too. "These are mayflies. Void mayflies." Wang Ting frowned uncontrollably. He started pondering. At the same time, he noticed that after the void mayflies flew out, the corpse lost all its movement. It wasn't alive. Wang Ting heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he looked at the void mayflies again. They seemed to have discovered his presence and swarmed towards him together. Wang Ting's heart jumped. Spiritual power gushed out and surged towards the void mayflies. However, the scene afterward made him stunned for a short moment. The void mayflies started devouring Wang Ting's spiritual power as if it was some delicious food. Wang Ting was thunderstruck. This sudden change was entirely unexpected. He didn't know what was happening. The void mayflies swallowed all the spiritual power Wang Ting released and continued flying towards him. Wang Ting released another burst of spiritual power as he retreated. However, the void mayflies were too fast. There were too many of them. They quickly gobbled up the spiritual power before surrounding him. Wang Ting wanted to retaliate, but he suddenly noticed that the void mayflies weren't attacking him. Instead, they flew around him intimately. Also, a happy emotion entered his mind through a special kind of connection. Wang Ting. This situation caused him to remember his little white, whom he had left on the Xingwu continent. This connection was similar to the connection created by the spiritual pet contract. But there were still some differences. This connection was more carefree and special. It was as if the void mayflies had merged with his spiritual power. Wang Ting had a sudden thought and stretched out his hand. The void mayflies stopped on his palm. "It can be done." Wang Ting was amazed. He felt that he had picked up a bunch of children accidentally. Chapter 515, Strength of Ultima. In the gloomy void, a corpse that was dozens of meters tall floated quietly. On its forehead sat a cross-legged figure. Around that figure, there were spots of light that resembled starlight, dancing around him. They looked extremely dazzling and mysterious. Wang Ting was trying to get familiar with the void mayflies. He felt as though these void mayflies were an extension of his spiritual power. They were like his ears, his eyes, and even his third hand. In this void, the range of one's spiritual power was extremely limited, but these void mayflies could fly far, and he could still feel their presence. Prior to this, he had already sent dozens of void mayflies flying in all directions. Through them, he could have a perception of how the situation was beyond his current reach. I didn't expect to have such a pleasant surprise in the void. Wang Teng's face looked like he was mocking himself. He didn't know why such an intriguing change had occurred. Was it because they had devoured his spiritual power? Wang Teng couldn't understand, so he put it at the back of his mind. Then, his eyes flashed, sending the void mayflies further out to explore the void. As he saw the void mayflies disappearing into the void horizon one by one, Wang Ting lowered his head and looked at the huge corpse below, deep in thought. He took out his mo Q and tapped near his foot. His body was suddenly lifted up, and he slashed towards the huge corpse. Boom! There was an explosion of force, striking the huge corpse. However, the sound it made was of metals clashing against each other. There was only a white mark left behind on the corpse's skin. Wang Ting narrowed his eyes and looked at the corpse in surprise before gritting his teeth. I don't believe that I can't deal with a corpse. He adjusted the force in his whole body and condensed it on his mo Q, swinging it down again. Killing intent explosion. Wang Teng used dark force this time and delivered his strongest blow. Then, a tiny wound finally appeared on the huge corpse's arm. It was like it had been cut with a small knife. Wang Teng looked at the wound blankly. He even leaned closer to have a look. It was indeed just a small wound. He couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. His dark force was already at the general stage, and his attack power wasn't weak. Yet, he could only leave a small wound on the huge corpse. How strong was this corpse when it was still alive? Wang Ting didn't even dare to imagine. However, the more horrifying the corpse was, the more it piqued his interest. He frowned in deep thought for a while and took out his shooting star spiral. With a spur of spiritual kinesis, he stabbed at the wound fiercely. Slash! The wound was finally enlarged, and a drop of golden blood flowed out, dripping down. Golden blood? Wang Teng was stunned. He didn't dare to collect it, though. He pondered for a moment, and his spiritual power surged, bringing the golden blood over. He stored it in a small jade bottle. Although it was only a drop of blood, considering the size of the huge corpse, a drop was enough to fill the jade bottle completely. Wang Ting stored the small jade bottle back into the space ring and planned to study it after getting back. He then continued hitting the wound with his shooting star spiral. Half an hour later, the wound had enlarged to a few inches wide. More golden blood was flowing out. At the same time, an attribute bubble drop. I knew it. Wang Teng's eyes lit up immediately, and he picked it up. Strength of Ultima *1. Wang Teng's body quivered, and his eyes widened. Ultima. He actually got an Ultima attribute from the corpse. What was Ultima? It was a realm higher than the conscious realm, and its power was multiple times stronger. If the conscious realm was only exclusive to prodigies, then only a handful amongst countless prodigies could grasp the extent of this remarkable power. At this time, a giant mountain-like figure emerged in his mind. He was grasping the strength of Ultima. Walking on the boundless land, he could destroy mountains and flatten valleys with a wave of his arm or a swing of his leg. He had infinite power. A trace of Ultima integrated into his mind, strange and mysterious. Wang Teng was overwhelmed. It was just 1 point of Ultima, but he had already grasped it. It was truly incredible. Now that he had the comprehension of Ultima, with a wave of his hand, Wang Teng could wield and bring forth terrifying strength. This was so fortunate for him. Wang Ting clenched his fists, and his eyes lit up. He stared at the corpse in front of him like he was staring at a huge treasure chest. Let's continue. The shooting star spiral formed a ray of cold light in the void. Wang Ting used all his might and focused his spiritual power, stabbing it right into the huge corpse. Under his unrelenting efforts, wounds started appearing on the corpse. Drops of golden blood were oozing out. Wang Ting had a zero-waste policy and collected a good amount of golden blood. After storing it in jade bottles, he threw them back into the corner of his space ring. At the same time, attribute bubbles dropped as well, floating around in the void. Strength of Ultima *1 Strength of Ultima *1 Strength of Ultima *1 Wang Ting was overjoyed as he picked them all up. After some struggling, he managed to obtain 12 points of Strength of Ultima. The traces of Ultima integrated and blended into his body and memory, giving Wang Ting new knowledge of the concept of strength. So this is what strength is. He suddenly had such an enlightenment in his heart. It was inexplicable. If he really had to explain what strength was, he wouldn't have been able to explain it clearly. However, he knew in his heart that this was strength. Wang Ting finally stopped. He was too tired. In order to leave a wound on the huge corpse, he had to exhaust all his strength. His force and spiritual power were all depleted now. The huge corpse was truly terrifying. The tough and powerful body had Wang Ting at his wits' end. Fortunately, after all this struggle, he had gained something out of it. Wang Ting decided to rest for now. Anyway, he couldn't leave this place. He might as well clean up this corpse first before deciding the next course of action. Or else, if he left the void and gave up on this treasure trove, he would have no place to cry in regret. Wang Ting's eyes flashed, and he took out an energy stone to restore his force. Fortunately, he had swept up all the treasures that belonged to the dark apparitions in the underground space in Black Crow City. They were now put to good use. He could only restore his force. Restoring his spiritual power was another issue altogether. Treasures that could restore spiritual power were rare. Without such treasures, his spiritual power would not recover that quickly. In the past, he had never thought about this as he used to pick up attribute bubbles to replenish his depleted spiritual power. However, now that he was in such a state, he knew how blessed he was back then. Alas, now that he was already in this state, he couldn't do anything about it. Chapter 516, The Terrifying Ancient Gods. His spiritual power restoration rate was too slow. Wang Ting could only restore his spiritual power while sensing the situation far away through his void mayflies. The void mayflies had been flying for a long time and had traveled far. With that little connection he had, he tried to perceive the situation. Unfortunately, there was nothing else except darkness in the void. The existence of the huge corpse was truly unexpected. Wang Ting opened his eyes and frowned. His spiritual power was not even restored to a tenth of what he previously had. He then scanned through his space ring, especially the loot he got from the dark apparitions. He didn't have the chance to go through them previously and didn't know what was inside. There were so many treasures here. If he could find one that could restore his spiritual power, it would greatly help him. He carefully scanned through the space rings one by one but was left with disappointment. It looks like him thinking too much. Wang Ting shook his head and sighed. He had already given up when he was at his last space ring. He glanced through it roughly but was stunned. Who knew? He actually felt a mysterious wave. In the next moment, an item appeared in his hand. It was a piece of black wood. It looked ordinary, but it exuded a faint fragrance. Wang Ting's eyes flashed, and he found the relevant memory in his mind. Wood of Tranquility. This was a rare treasure that could restore one's spiritual power. Wang Ting had only heard about it before and didn't know that it actually existed amongst the treasure he had. I've hit the jackpot. Wang Ting took a deep breath and placed the Wood of Tranquility in between his eyes. He then felt something cold yet warm flowing in his mind. There was a surge in his spiritual power, shooting up his recovery. The rumors are true. Wang Ting heaved a sigh of relief. Time passed, and Wang Ting's spiritual power was soon restored. He then continued the onslaught of attacks on the huge corpse. Strength of Ultima *1 Strength of Ultima *1 Strength of Ultima *1 Strength of Ultima *1 After losing count of the days, the huge corpse was now completely unrecognizable. He was like an ant gnawing a giant. Wang Ting couldn't help but admire himself. He managed to turn a powerful corpse into this miserable mess. His perseverance was extraordinary. Towards the end, He couldn't pick up any strength of Ultima attributes anymore. It looked like he had reached the limit. His strength of Ultima attribute had reached 56 point. Strength of Ultima, 56 100, first level. Wang Ting nodded in satisfaction. He couldn't wish for more. Obtaining the strength of Ultima was already a great fortune. In the end, his phase fell onto the head of the huge corpse. Only the head was still intact. Wang Ting had left it for the end. The brain was the place where memory was stored. If he attacked it, what would he obtain? Wang Ting had his hopes up. After some rest and filling his stomach, Wang Ting started attacking the corpse's head. Boom, boom, boom. Terrifying attacks landed endlessly on the tilted head. A wound started appearing after a long time, and a few attribute bubbles dropped out. Wang Ting's eyes flashed, and he immediately went over to collect the fruits of his labor. Imperial Realm Spirit * 10 Ancient Gods Body * 1 Ancient God Language * 1 Imperial Realm Spirit * 8 Imperial Realm Enlightenment * 5 As the attribute bubbles merged into his body, Wang Ting was elated. Imperial Realm Spirit. Imperial Realm Enlightenment. He actually managed to obtain the Imperial Realm Spirit and Enlightenment from the corpse. His spirit and enlightenment were in the Imperial Realm, and he understood how tough it was to advance in the Imperial Realm. It was too difficult to meet others who possessed Imperial Realm Spirit and Enlightenment. But he didn't expect to meet one here. However, it wasn't strange when he thought about it. The corpse must have been extremely powerful when it was alive, so it was reasonable for it to possess Imperial Realm Spirit and Enlightenment. In fact, it might be even stronger than this when it was alive. He was merely collecting the leftovers. However, to Wang Ting, he had already benefited immensely from the good stuff that leaked from the big man's finger. Suddenly, his mind shook. Ancient God's Body. This was a scripture of the highest level that exceeded the sky rank. Wang Ting was shocked. He knew that the corpse head would bring him great items, but something of this level was out of his wildest dreams. At this moment, memories started flowing into his mind. There was a gigantic figure sitting on a planet. That was right. A planet. The figure was drawing on the vitality of the planet, tempering and forging itself. Veins and pores appeared on his body like constellations in the sky, and chi drifted above the planet, merging into his body, eventually strengthening him. A peculiar and mysterious symbol appeared in between his eyes. The planet under him gradually turned gray, giving off a lifeless aura. It eventually shattered and turned into meteors that drifted away. The gigantic figure got up and, without any hesitation, headed into the depths of the void and vanished. Wang Ting got back to his senses. He was left speechless. He opened his dry mouth and swallowed his saliva unconsciously. I did it, he muttered to himself. This ancient God's body scripture was way beyond his imagination. It was too terrifying and powerful. Based on the ranks on Earth, this would have exceeded the sky rank. This couldn't even be defined. Besides the ancient God's body, Wang Ting had also obtained the attribute bubble for ancient God language. Ancient God language was an ancient language belonging to an ancient race of gods. When the language memory merged into his mind, Wang Ting understood the rough situation of the ancient gods. Obviously, this corpse belonged to an ancient god. Every single ancient god was a natural cultivator. They were powerful beyond comparison and would use planets as their cultivation resource. They plundered everything and walked in the starry sky. Their whereabouts were mysterious. Fortunately, there were not many ancient gods, or the entire universe would not be enough for them. Wang Ting took in a deep breath and looked at the battered head. He then continued bombarding it with attacks. Imperial Realm Spirit * 3 Imperial Realm Enlightenment * 2 Imperial Realm Spirit * 1 It was a pity that all that was left were spirit and enlightenment attributes. There were no other special attributes. Even the number of spirit and enlightenment attributes diminished till the point where they never appeared again. Wang Ting stopped farming and gazed at the pulverized corpse. He couldn't help but touch his nose. Did he go too far? An ancient god had died, and Wang Ting still had to mess with his corpse. If he knew what was happening, he might have jumped out of hell and smacked him to death. Wang Ting coughed and shook his head in guilt. He then channeled his spiritual power and shoved the ancient god corpse far away. Go away, we shall not meet again. Chapter 517, Space Tornado. The void was dead and vast. There seemed to be no living things present here. However, a figure was flying around quickly in this environment. In front of this figure, many light spots were flying towards the depth of the void. They were extremely small but fast. They passed through the void like a flash of lightning, leaving a trail of light behind them elongating into the distance. Wang Ting chased after the void mayflies and activated his space talent to the maximum. His speed wasn't slow, and he was doing all right. However, there was a distance limit to his space traveling. He couldn't jump too far, so he could only choose to jump continuously in order to complete a long-distance travel. If not, he wouldn't have been able to catch up with the speed of the void mayflies. Of course, he could ask the void mayflies to lower their speed, but he never did that. In this endless void, once he started slacking, he would turn numb. He had entered that state in the past. If it wasn't for the appearance of the void mayflies and the ancient god's corpse, he might not have woken up from his stupor. The energy stones in his space ring were being expended at a fast speed. A small portion of them had already turned worthless. He threw them into the void. Since there was no force here, he had to rely on these force stones to recover his force. Without them, the force in his body would have long dried up. He wouldn't be able to jump around for so long in this void. But using his space talent frequently had its own benefits as well. He had a deeper understanding of his space talent now. This void was situated within a dimensional rift. There were powerful space fluctuations here, so for someone with space talent, this was the best cultivation ground. Unfortunately, the void was too dangerous. He could encounter space cracks and energy fluctuations all the time. Any carelessness could cost him his life, and it would be a terrible death. Wang Ting always encountered such situations while traveling in the void. Without the void mayflies leading the way and scouting the dangers ahead, he would have been dead by now. After a long time, the void mayflies in a certain direction suddenly lost contact with him. Wang Ting stopped in his tracks instantly. His eyes shimmered, and he hesitated for a moment before he flew towards the direction where the disappeared void mayflies went. He moved forward carefully. Soon after, he stopped abruptly and looked flabbergasted. A frightening and invisible tornado was sweeping towards him from the long passage of void in front. Wherever the storm went, the space would break and white lines would appear. The void mayflies that lost contact had accidentally gone too close and were swept into the windstorm. Based on how powerful this storm was, those void mayflies were probably dead. Wang Ting shot back. He saw many objects in the heart of the windstorm. There were broken rocks and all sorts of junks from who knew where. He was too far away and the tornado was spinning at high speed, so he couldn't differentiate the objects inside. Other than that, Wang Ting also saw a few corpses of some unknown star beasts. The others looked like humans. He didn't know where they came from. How many dimensions did this tornado go to such that it had so many corpses in it? After all, Wang Ting only found the ancient god's corpse after traveling a huge patch of the void. Speaking of the ancient god's corpse, he didn't see it in the space tornado. It looked like he managed to find it based on pure luck. Wang Ting highly suspected that the luck he obtained from little Ziyi was starting to show its effect. As expected, he was the son of Lady Luck. At this moment, though, Wang Ting didn't have any thoughts towards the corpses in the space tornado. The space tornado was too scary. The only choice he had was to evade it. Why would he dare to get close? Just now, when he tried to approach it, he felt a strong suction force coming from ahead of him. It was pulling him towards the tornado. Mind you, he was a long distance away from the space tornado, but he almost got sucked in. You could imagine how frightening it was. Anyway, those objects and corpses must be extraordinary since they were able to survive in the tornado. Wang Ting's eyes were glistening when he retreated. He stared at the tornado in deep thought. He touched his chin and pondered on a plan. Suddenly, he got a shock. He saw attribute bubbles in the space tornado. The inside of the space tornado was too chaotic, so he didn't notice the presence of the attribute bubbles at the first glance. Now, when he looked inside carefully, he realized that there were many bubbles there. The number was sizable. Wang Teng was tempted. It was hard to snatch the objects and corpses from the mouth of the tiger, but these attribute bubbles were formless. Since he was the only one who could see them, it wouldn't be hard to pick them up with his spiritual power, right? He gritted his teeth and made his decision. He decided to give it a try. His spiritual power surged out and carefully inched towards the tornado. Boom! An explosion occurred in Wang Teng's mind. He immediately felt this spiritual power getting cut. He lost control of it entirely. A drop of cold sweat fell down his forehead. It was so frightening. This space tornado was a large-scale meat grinder. Wang Teng looked at the attribute bubbles. Not wanting to give up, he stretched his spiritual power out again. This time, he decided to use all his spiritual power. He kneaded it into a strong thread and threw it at the attribute bubbles. Boom! Explosions were heard once again. However, this time, the spiritual power didn't break off. It's possible. Wang Teng was elated. But he didn't dare to be careless. He quickly got close to the nearest attribute bubbles and pulled them over. The suction force of the tornado was extremely powerful, sweeping his spiritual power too. Wang Teng's expression turned grim. He controlled his spiritual power with all his might as he pulled it away from the tornado. He was in a tug-of-war with the space tornado. If there were people who managed to survive the space tornado after meeting it, they would be flabbergasted when they knew that Wang Teng dared to snatch something from a space tornado. Boom, boom, boom. Wang Teng's mind was filled with explosions. He frantically pushed out his Imperial Realm spiritual power so that he could pull over the attribute bubbles a little by a little from the tornado. After some time, with a soft pop, he finally pulled out the attribute bubbles. Wang Teng was afraid that they would get swept into the space tornado again, so he picked them up instantly. Space *70 space *81 space *126 space tornado *1. As the bubbles merged into his body, Wang Teng shuddered. Most of the bubbles had the space attribute. It allowed his space attribute to grow many times immediately. But the most important one was the last attribute bubble. Space tornado. This was an extremely rare space skill attribute bubble. Chapter 518, Found the way back home. The space tornado continued wreaking havoc. Wherever it went, the area would be in chaos. On the other side, Wang Teng sensed his gains. Space tornado. The process of the formation of the space tornado appeared in his mind. By coincidence, the explosion of space energy caused the energy to circle furiously. It got more and more violent and gradually turned into the eye of a tornado. Then, it slowly formed a tornado. Wang Teng's gaze turned intense. This space skill was so powerful. There was a naturally formed space tornado right in front of him. Looking at it and thinking that he would be able to form a space tornado himself in the future, even if the power was only 0.1% of this, it was an exceptional move. Wang Teng took a deep breath. He felt a huge strain on the spiritual power in his mind. The tug-of-war seemed simple, but it wasn't. If his spiritual power wasn't at the Imperial Realm, he wouldn't even think about snatching the attribute bubbles out of the space tornado. At this moment, he was looking at the other attribute bubbles in the tornado. Naturally, he wouldn't give them up easily. He took out the wood of tranquility and used it to recover his spiritual power. For the next few days, he followed the space tornado closely. After his spiritual power was fully recovered, he would push it out to snatch the attribute bubbles inside. He was experienced now, so the next few times were much smoother. He would succeed at one try. There was no failure. Although he could only pull out a few attribute bubbles each time, it was good enough. He wouldn't return empty-handed. Most of the attribute bubbles he pulled out were space attributes or space tornado attributes. There were no other attributes. Suddenly, one day, Wang Teng felt the energy in the space tornado turning exceptionally violent suddenly. The space tornado turned berserk too. Wang Ting's expression changed slightly. An ominous feeling floated into his heart. He was decisive and immediately stopped picking up the attribute bubbles. He escaped far away quickly. He ran until he couldn't see the space tornado behind him anymore. At this moment, a loud explosion came from behind. The explosion rang continuously. Frightening energy waves swept towards him, blowing his clothes and hair up noisily. Wang Ting's pupils constricted, feeling appalled. Did the space tornado just explode? The force was so scary. He had run so far away, but he could still feel the impact of the explosions. It was incredible. Suddenly, he felt lucky. It was fortunate that he had escaped in time. If not, based on how close he was to the space tornado, he didn't know what would have happened to him. Wang Ting let out a long sigh. He sat down cross-legged in the void and counted his gains. After a few days, his space attribute had increased tremendously. Space, 71 2010,000. He remembered the war in Star Maple City. The devil god created 5-dimensional rifts with his 5 fingers. At that time, the space attributes he dropped allowed him to raise his space attribute to around 4,000. Now, it climbed again and reached 7,000. It was getting closer to the perfected stage of 10,000. He wondered what changes would happen after it reached the 10,000 mark. Also, his space tornado skill rose too. Space tornado, 76-100, foundation. This space skill was extremely difficult. Wang Ting was only at the foundation stage, so it wasn't easy if he wanted to execute it successfully. However, Wang Ting wasn't worried. If he had no choice, he could still add his blank attributes here to raise his proficiency. Half an hour later, Wang Ting got up and headed towards the location of the space tornado. There were many objects and corpses within the space tornado. If 1 or 2 of them survived the explosion, he would gain big time. Unfortunately, when Wang Ting got closer, there was only a silent void left. The broken rocks and the corpses in the space tornado were all gone. It was as if they had never been here. Wang Ting sighed. Indeed, he was thinking too much. There was no free lunch in the world. He turned and followed the void mayflies further into the void. Time flew again. After meeting the space tornado, Wang Ting didn't have any other encounters. He could only search for a way home aimlessly in the void. He didn't make any progress. Currently, he was sitting cross-legged on a huge rock, floating in the void silently. He had discovered this huge rock not long ago. It was like a small island, around the size of half a basketball court. Wang Ting landed here temporarily to rest. Honestly, in this void, having a place to sit was a luxury. At the moment, he was chewing his barbecued meat as if it were candle wax while thinking how he should leave. He had searched a large area over the past few days, but he couldn't find an exit. The result was disappointing. If he didn't have a strong mentality, he would have gone mad. He frowned and pondered. He went through all his methods and his entire attributes panel again and again, checking carefully each time. Unfortunately, besides his space talent, no other methods were useful. Wang Ting grasped his hair. This was too difficult. Too difficult. Was he supposed to stay in this void for the rest of his life? No. He was still young and hadn't experienced many happy moments. He couldn't die here silently all alone without anyone's notice. The void mayflies seemed to have sensed Wang Ting's mood. They flew over and circled him as if comforting him. You little things are quite sensitive. Wang Ting shook his head. He thought of Little White. He had entered the martial arts path because of Little White. At that time, a group of martial warriors was fighting over Little White. Both parties were injured, allowing him to collect their attribute bubbles. Just like that, he became a martial disciple. It felt just like yesterday. Although the martial arts path was dangerous and hard, he had no regrets. In this era, he would be inferior if he didn't practice martial arts. In an instant, Wang Ting's gaze turned sharp and resolute. His parents, Lin Chuhan, Dan Taixian, Gorlin. Wang Ting knew that all of them were waiting for his return. He must survive. Suddenly, a thought flashed into his mind. Little White. That's right, Little White. Wang Teng suddenly thought of something. There was a spiritual pet contract between him and Little White. Would he be able to sense the coordinates of the Xingwu continent using this connection? The moment this thought appeared, it grew stronger and stronger. Wang Teng immediately closed his eyes and searched for the fated connection. It's very weak, but I can still sense it faintly. It seems to be in that direction. Wang Teng opened his eyes, frowning. He moved the huge rock below him and rode it towards that direction. As he moved forward, the connection became clearer and clearer. It was still weak, but Wang Teng could sense hope. Xingwu continent, within a mountain ridge. In the sky, a large crow covered with red and black feathers cawed towards the sky. The sound was shrill enough to pierce through rocks. Chapter 519, Emergency Call in the Forest. A giant scorpion was fighting with a crimson male lion star beast. When the scorpion heard the sudden caw in the sky, it was shocked. It shouted, "Little creature, I don't mind if you don't help me, but why are you cawing?" Caw. The crow in the sky cawed once again. "What? You're saying you felt his presence?" The giant scorpion was shocked. This giant scorpion was the metal armor flaming scorpion, and the crow in the sky was undoubtedly Little White. Its appearance was extremely different from before. Its body had grown much bigger, and its feathers had turned from pure black to red and black. It looked divine. At the same time, the aura it gave off was stronger than before Wang Teng left. After swallowing the small emerald glazed flame, Little White's growth became frightening. Wang Teng left Little White to watch over the metal armor flaming scorpion before he left, but he probably never thought that they would start working together in the end. Roar. The crimson lion was furious when it saw the metal armor flaming scorpion ignoring its presence and even had the gall to talk to its companion. It pounced on the metal armor flaming scorpion. "You lion, how dare you sneak an attack on me when I'm not paying attention?" The metal armor flaming scorpion got a scare. It moved its huge body to the side and swept its tail. Green flames exploded, lunging at the crimson lion. Boom. The crow in the sky launched its attack too. A black flame engulfed its body and soared down like a frightening fighter jet. Soon, a lord-level giant flaming lion died unwillingly under their combined attacks. The metal armor flaming scorpion laughed. "I have disliked this lion for a long time. It always created troubles for me in the past. I finally managed to kill it today. Look, what did I say? With our combined strength, we'll be able to rule this mountain ridge." Little White flew down from the sky and gave the metal armor flaming scorpion a look of contempt. F***K, little guy, what's with that look? The metal armor flaming scorpion was infuriated. Caw. Little White spurted out a black flame from its throat and glared coldly at the metal armor flaming scorpion. The metal armor flaming scorpion seemed afraid of that black flame. It took a few steps back and said awkwardly, "I'm kidding. Then, it hurriedly changed the topic. "Oh right, you said that you sensed that brat." Little White glared at it and spat a mouth of black flame at the scorpion. The metal armor flaming scorpion screamed in pain the moment it got hit by the black flame. It rolled on the ground, but the black fire wouldn't extinguish. The black flame seemed scarier than the small emerald glazed flame it had sucked. "My mistake. Here's my master, the metal armor flaming scorpion shouted. Little White opened its mouth and sucked the black flame back. The metal armor flaming scorpion's body was burnt. It looked a little disheveled. A chill invaded its body, and it kept sucking in cold air. Fortunately, Little White didn't use its full force. If not, this wouldn't be all. The metal armor flaming scorpion glanced at Little White and muttered, "Has not here. Do you have to do this?" Caw. All right, I'm keeping quiet. I'm really keeping quiet." The metal armor flaming scorpion had a thick health bar. After some time, it was alive and kicking again. It inched towards Little White and said, "Didn't our master fall into a dimensional rift? I heard that place is extremely dangerous and all forces and spiritual power are blocked there. How did you sense him?" Little White replied, "Caw. The spiritual pet contract." The metal armor flaming scorpion was enlightened. Its gaze shimmered as it continued. That means that he's coming back soon. Caw. Little White was overjoyed, cawing happily. All right, since we can't help him, let's just wait here and not go anywhere. Now, let's talk about splitting this lion, the metal armor flaming scorpion said. Little White cawed. What? No. You ate the star core the last time. It's my turn now. The metal armor flaming scorpion shook its head furiously as if it had heard something unacceptable. Caw. I don't care. If that's the case, I won't work together with you again. I'm getting bullied. The crow spoke in its language while the scorpion spoke in its own. However, they managed to converse quite well. If Wang Ting saw this, his jaws might drop. At this moment, in the void, Wang Ting sat on the giant rock with a hint of happiness in his eyes. He felt it. He really felt it. Through the connection of the spiritual pet contract, he managed to sense a weak conscience like an extremely thin thread. Wang Ting shuddered. Almost instantly, he caught the coordinates. He almost cried. This was great. He could finally leave this damn place. Wang Ting jumped up and circled the giant rock a few times. He didn't want to stay a second longer here. He immediately started carving the space rune array. His spiritual power surged out as he drew the lines on the huge rock beneath his feet. Pieces of force stones were buried too. The complexity of the space array exceeded Wang Teng's expectations. Even though it was just a small array, its difficulty was on par with the large arrays he had created in the past. However, Wang Teng's spiritual power was in the Imperial realm, and his rune mastery wasn't low either. Hence, the space array didn't pose much difficulty to him. Time passed slowly. Runes started appearing, and the space array was gradually formed. One day, the space array shone glaringly, forming a dimensional rift gradually. Behind the dimensional rift was a path that led to the unknown. Wang Ting stood in the array and looked at the completed space tunnel in front of him. He took a deep breath unconsciously. Go home. The next instant, he stepped through the rift without any hesitation. On the Xingwu continent, near Yong City where the Donghai dimensional rift was, in the dark mist forest. The Flying Eagle team was a high-ranked martial warrior team from the Jisin martial house. The 6 members of the team were all at the 5-star soldier level and above. Not only were they strong, but they were also experienced in actual combat. There weren't many teams like theirs in the Jisin martial house. They had been in the Xingwu continent for more than 10 days and had killed many advanced rank star beasts. The harvest was good. Currently, they were facing a 7-star earth element giant python. After a few rounds of fighting, it had suffered some serious injuries, and they would be able to kill it soon. They searched for a long time before they found this earth element star beast. There was a high chance of it having a star core and star bone. If they killed it, they might earn 2 to 3 billion. However, at this moment, all of them received an emergency call on their wristwatches suddenly. Their expressions changed slightly as they noticed the message on their wristwatches. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.